Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Belt?
I'm sorry.
Mayor Belt?
Pledge allegiance first.
Oh.
That's right. I mean, once again.
Once again. There it is.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think 2 years in, I'd learned something, but now, Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Mayor Belt?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Berner?
Here.
Mr. Farrell?
Here.
Ms. Kay?
Here.
Mr. Spencer?
Here.
Ms. Tillerson? Here. Mr. McCoy?
Here. The first agenda item is approval of the minutes. The minutes for the council meeting of last month, November 4th, were circulated, as well as the November 14th special call meeting. I did not have any comments or edits to those. Do any council members?
I do not.
No.
No. Were you pointing
I
at?
had an admin thing that.
Okay, very good. With that change and not any further questions or comments or changes, the minutes are deemed approved. Next agenda item is citizen comments on agenda items only at this juncture. Are there any citizen comments? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Jennifer Hayes, board member, Kiowa ARB. And in reviewing the packet for today's meeting, I was surprised to see the proposal within the noise ordinance to ban landscape equipment that has the two-cycle engines. And so I'm hopeful just in the course of today's meeting that some more information on that proposal will be forthcoming. Some of the questions that quickly came to my mind were which major stakeholders were involved in coming up with the ban and the 6-month time frame, what were their thoughts on impact to quality of landscape maintenance work, and any potential cost implications to residents. Does the ban apply to landscape maintenance and their crews, or tree removal work as well? And all of this is part of a potential ARB item, because good landscape maintenance is, of course, an aesthetic issue. And it's key to maintaining the beautiful landscapes that Kiowa has, both natural and man-made. And I look forward to more information on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other citizen comments? We have a couple of presentations. First from Tom Crawford, the Chief Operating Officer from MUSC Health System. And I suspect everybody knows. We're looking forward to the grand opening of the new facility in a couple of weeks' time. And what we really haven't heard about is kind of what services are you expecting to be available kind of from the get-go, and how that will evolve over time. But the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I appreciate the invitation. So very excited to be here on behalf of Dave Cole, the president of the university, and Pat Colley, the CEO. As everybody knows, MUSC Health is firmly committed to providing 24/7, 365 emergency services to the Sea Islands community. So we've been working diligently over the last couple of years to put up a building which would include that freestanding emergency department, but also include a medical office building that would provide services today, but actually grow additional services in the future based on the demand. So I want you to know that our grand opening is scheduled for Friday, December 12th from 1 to 3. It's open to the public, and we'd love to give you a tour. I'll be staffing it myself personally for half of that time. And we'll commence our services on December 18th at 8 a.m. So December 18th, 8 a.m., we will have an emergency department serving this community. So that means emergency services like you would have if you walked into any emergency room will be available to you. Emergency services is largely about treating you in case of any particular event like cardiac event, neurological event, a fall or trauma, where timing's of the essence. And so we can provide those services now. We'll back it up logistically with ambulances. We also have a helipad, so if we need to get you to a higher level of care, we can get you there. Hopefully we don't have to, but pretty quickly. We're going to start off with primary care, cardiology, orthopedics, and rotating subspecialties. And again, we'll continue to grow that based on the demand. Where there is a demand, but maybe not large enough to bring a provider here based on the windshield time, we're also going to support it with telehealth as well. Our goal is to make care as convenient as possible for the constituency that we serve. We'll also have physical therapy in the building, non-chemo infusion, basic lab services. We'll also have radiology, including CT, MRI, and X-ray, which people have to travel for now. So again, small building, but we'll have a robust array of services available to the community, and we're looking forward to partnering with you and growing this over time. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Could be a phlebotomist on site.
So we will have phlebotomy on site, yes, sir.
And you said primary care cardiology and orthopedics. When will those go online?
Those should go online that week as well.
And those doctors will be taking new patients, or is this serving existing
They
patients?
should take all new patients. So our goal is to provide access and expand access. Our board's been very clear with us that we understand how difficult it is at times to get in to see a primary care provider or a specialist. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to open up care locations throughout the state. We're actually up to 18 hospitals now and 1,950 care locations. I'm sorry, 950 care locations. Let me
So if
clarify.
you happen to be primary care at a different MUSC facility, it would be easy to transfer here?
It should be very easy. Same medical record, should be seamless. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So this may be obvious, but to make sure I'm not assuming. So ambulance response on Kia will now go to your new facility as opposed to
Yeah,
downtown?
we'll be partnering with the way that you currently handle local 911. And so we've contracted for our entire health system with a group called Lifeguard because it's underneath Global Medical Response. So they're acclimated not only to providing critical care transport for hospitals, but they also do staff 911 in certain communities throughout the United States. So we thought they'd be a good partner for us.
So we'll have both Charleston County EMS as well as the service that you have?
Yes, sir. We're still working through that now.
Okay, thanks.
So just to clarify that, and Stephanie, please feel free to correct the record. We had a meeting with the new head of Charleston County EMS. My understanding is there is an agreement in place, but it's essentially a kind of a backstop agreement that 911 calls still go through Charleston County. Primary dispatch would be Charleston County EMS. To the extent that there may not be a vehicle sitting over in Station 7, the one right next door, Station 10, then they could reach out to MUSC to be dispatched.
Yes, sir. We call it a warm transfer, so we don't have to put the phone down. So we're here to not replace, but to complement and supplement. We've done some of this work in Orangeburg as well, and it's worked very, very well between the existing provider, but then having that backup.
So I remember when Charleston County EMS talked to us earlier this year, they were talking about the lag when they are transporting somebody to shift a new ambulance here. It would cover those kinds of gaps and even out the service more, is what it sounds like.
Yes, sir, that's the intent.
The
Also
intent.
with air transport when needed.
And I saw firsthand, unfortunately not too long ago, where a 911 call goes in and all the parties that are part of that. So it's a pretty impressive system where Beach Patrol and Fire Department and everybody is responding and on the same sheet.
No, yes, sir, I agree. I agree.
Will it have trauma capabilities, or will we still be shipped downtown for
So
trauma?
it's going to depend upon the extent of the injuries. So if you need a level 1 trauma center, I'm going to have to get you to Charleston. So in Charleston, we have both the adult and the pediatric level 1 trauma centers. But for things that we can care for locally, our goal is to care for you locally.
Are you going to be moving existing staff out to this facility? Or are you hiring new folks?
Mostly new folks. Mostly new folks. Some existing staff that lived here and are not enjoying the commute into Charleston proper anymore.
So if any residents wanted to investigate whether they wanted to move their providers here, how would they do that?
So that's a great question. So we can do it one of two ways. I can actually give you a point of contact in our access center that can help arrange and coordinate that. His name's Jason Claps. That'll work for me personally. Or we can have you call the practice once it's open and just let them know you don't want to transfer your care there. Whatever's easiest for you.
And I've learned moving around that you need to work with your insurance company too.
We will work with your insurance company.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir. But very exciting to be here and finally bringing this to fruition. We had some stumbles along the way. I would say everybody here has been wonderful to work with. And I actually think where we ended up was a blessing in disguise. I think it's going to serve the community better.
A completely kind of digressive question.
Yes, sir.
Unrelated to
Yes,
the
sir.
operation of the facility, but this is of interest in other contexts. When did you break ground? When did vertical construction actually start on this facility? Do you recall approximately?
Oh, geez. So I'm smiling a little bit because in my office, I have the shovel from the original groundbreaking on the other parcel of
Yeah.
land that reminds me that I may not be as good as I think I am at what I do. So there was a delta between
Yes,
that
yes.
date of probably at least 10 months. So we've been at this from a construction standpoint for at least about 18 months. We didn't do another groundbreaking. We did a topping off ceremony roughly about 18 months ago. We didn't think we'd be able to get into the new building until May of '26. We were able to consolidate the timeline without compromising the building that we built for the community. So very proud of how that turned out.
But 18 months from actually moving dirt at the new.
Roughly, yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yep, I didn't bring my timeline with me, or
Okay.
I would have had that for you. But we moved pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
we can put up medical office buildings and freestanding emergency departments pretty quickly, assuming we have the right site to build upon.
Any other questions?
Just a statement. Thank you for citing down here. It's much appreciated by the community, so thank you.
We're very appreciative of the open arms that we've received in coming here, so thank you. And all of you have been pivotal in that as well.
Well, and the town has provided financial support to make this possible, and there's actually a little healing garden. It doesn't look very garden-like right now at
It
this
will, I
time of year,
promise.
but it will.
Yes, sir, I
That
promise.
overlooks
Need more
the
money.
lake, so I encourage everybody to meditate over in that area. Mr. Crawford, thank you very much for taking the time to
Thank
be
you,
with us
sir. I
today and for the
appreciate you.
update. Very useful information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Meredith Blair, our Director of Communications and Public Affairs, will provide a brief update or overview on the customer satisfaction survey the town undertook this couple of months ago.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Meredith.
Okay. So not too long ago, we put out our 2025 community survey so we can get feedback from the public, and I have a few slides to highlight some of those results. So this year in our survey, we had 451 community members participate, and 98% of those respondents were full-time and part-time property owners. So just a few employees and others here and there were taking this survey, but majority of those you can see are full-time, part-time property owners. So our satisfaction with town employees and services, more than 73% say they are satisfied or very satisfied with the town's overall services. This is modestly up from 69% last year. And more than 74% say they are satisfied or very satisfied with their interactions with town staff. That is essentially the same as last year. That was 73%. So pretty much the same for this. And looking at what the town does well, getting that feedback from respondents, our emergency preparedness came in at 69% of people saying that the town does emergency preparedness well. That's actually down from last year. That came in at 77% last year. This year, it was still the highest, though, at 69%. Environmental and wildlife support, 67% say we're doing that well. That's up from last year, 50%.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm surprised about the emergency preparedness one, to be honest, with the reactivation of the CERT team and all the other things that have happened. Do you have any further insight or just?
I don't, but it kind of correlates with just the number of respondents that we got. So this year we were actually down respondents. So if we go back, we had 451 community members participate. Last year we had 773.
It does raise one issue, and we may need to take a fresh look at how we compose the questions and what we're trying to evaluate on a go-forward basis, because what the survey question actually asked is identify the top things that you think the town does well. And it may have been somebody that identified this year something other than emergency preparedness. Doesn't mean they didn't believe that the town did that well. They simply identified other items rather than emergency preparedness. So we've got to, look about, we probably need to next year think about asking the question, with regard to each service, are you satisfied or not? So we can benchmark that going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, just expanding a little bit on what the mayor was saying is this is just kind of the highlights of the survey, and at the end I'll explain how you can view the full survey and all of the questions. So there were certain individual questions breaking down beach patrol specifically and different services. So this is just the overview highlights though. So back to what the town is doing well. Like I said, beach patrol, 58% of folks said that is something that we are doing well, and that's up from last year, as well as communication bumped up just a tad. So those were kind of the top 4 items when folks were able to rank what is the town currently doing well. As far as areas to improve upon, so another question was, after what the town is doing well, what can the town improve upon? So kind of that same setup of question. Now, code enforcement came in at the top with 44%. Last year, 35% of people said that we needed to improve our code enforcement.
So a higher number is bad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this one, I had to think through the color coordination process for this one because it is a little bit different than the last slide we saw. So for our permitting process, 40%, that was actually the exact same percentage that we saw last year for that. Our planning and development projects, so this year 35% of people said that we need to improve on that, but last year 56% of people said we need to improve on that. So that actually is an improvement from last year. Short-term rental compliance, 28% of people this year said we need to improve on that. Last year, that was 24%. Some key resident priorities. So based on the feedback we got through comments, but also specific questions, this kind of breaks down into a few different things that residents are really prioritizing and passionate about on Kiowa. So resiliency, specifically flood mitigation infrastructure and natural habitat preservation. Those are some top priorities for our residents in that category. And then wildlife, specifically our bobcats. We had a few questions targeting our bobcats and how much people care about protecting those on the island. So supporting KICA and implementing restrictions, there was a high amount of favorable response for that support, as well as taking the Bobcat Guardian Pledge. Now, we had a lot of comments about traffic and main gate congestion, so that definitely is a priority for folks, as well as managing construction and development on the island and speed limit enforcement. These are just a few additional comments that I pulled that kind of tie into those categories I just talked about. We had two or three opportunities where people could just submit comments towards the end of the survey so they could kind of give their feedback if they felt that they still needed to make comments that weren't going to be answered or solved in the survey. So just a few comments that I pulled. One about traffic enforcement. Someone said, what happened to the traffic enforcement we saw for a moment there in August? Contractors are not complying with speed limits despite claims otherwise. Someone said, limit any high density housing or development that overtaxes the infrastructure. One person said, on-island access is a floodgate open to everyone and anyone who wants access. Fix the 35-minute backup at the gate for the homeowners. And another comment said, development of the island must be stopped. Kiowa is a special place because of its pristine and natural beauty. If people don't want to come here to enjoy the paradise that it is, let them go somewhere else. So, like I said, you'll be able to read all of these comments when we get to that, but this was just a few of the highlights because a lot of these were the categories. If we go back, a lot of the comments were about traffic and main gate congestion, managing construction and development, as well as the speed limit enforcement. So now, as I was saying, as far as the survey results go, you'll be able to reference this highlight of presentation and as well as the full survey results where you can literally see everything that SurveyMonkey is able to provide that to us. I will be posting this on our website tomorrow, and then all of this will go out in our e-newsletter on Thursday of this week. So if you are curious about any of the specifics or just really want to dive deeper into it, you'll have full access to do that. But if you have any questions, I would love to try and take a stab at them.
Several of these are good inputs. They're all good inputs, but are Kika responsibility versus TOKI, are those going to be sent over to Kika just so they're aware the comments were made?
That's a good question. And a lot of the comments that we did receive, of course, were about certain things that aren't the town's responsibility. That it is more of a Kika thing. So I absolutely can get with Leah on that with Kika and kind of share some of the things that need to be handed off to Kika
When we did the survey we did 2 years ago, I had a lot of the same comments about town, do something about traffic congestion at the main gate, or can we do something about main gate access and control? And obviously, that's not something that's within the town's purview, at least not directly. And, Kika and the Kika board are working on that with regard to the
No surprise,
revised gate access policy. So.
But that the comments were made, I think is probably important for them to be aware.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you indicated earlier there was about a 50% drop-off of respondents. Was the survey done at the same time last year?
So I believe it was done around the same time. I think this year we might have put it out just a little bit later. And once I noticed that our responses were kind of low, I reached out to Leah with Kika, and they were able to share the survey in their e-newsletter, I think twice, and they put it on their Facebook page. We put it on our e-newsletter several times. We even had an alert on our website saying, take the survey as soon as people went on our website. And unfortunately, we tried everything we possibly could besides going door to door. And unfortunately, the response was just lower.
One may interpret that to say, and I don't really hazard to say this, that the community is more or less content, because otherwise they'd be responding and complaining. I don't know if it's fair to say that or not, but it's a surprise, a 50% drop.
You could draw that conclusion.
I was surprised by the numbers as well.
There probably are, relative to 2 years ago when the last survey was done, fewer issues that are animating the community.
True.
That may be a little bit different as of today, given some of the back and forth about the proposed beachfront overlay. But generally speaking, I think that may be part of it. But that's, again, like you said, speculation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Having not seen these results until now, I'm very encouraged by a couple of things. Number one, the community seems to have become increasingly aware of resiliency issues, and we certainly, as a town, as part of the town's newly passed comprehensive plan, have focused an awful lot of issues in our time and attention on resiliency, and it seems to be paying off. There seems to be a community-wide reaction to that, and it's favorable. And so for the multitude of initiatives and programs that we've got in the works that are underway, this is really positive reinforcement. I feel really, really good about that. And then secondly, from the wildlife perspective, from the work that Jim Jordan and his team are doing, and all of the emphasis on Bobcat Pledge and Bobcats and Bluegrass and SGA reduction, it seems to be, again, resonating with the community to have that be at the top of the things, among the top of the things that the town is doing well, is a public recognition, a community-wide recognition of Jim and his team and the hard work that they put forward. We're not there yet. We had another adult male bobcat who was unfortunately killed. We don't have necropsy results in yet, but it was a traffic accident, and we'll let you know what the cause of that is when we get it in. But in the meantime, this is reinforcement of the work that we're doing and will continue to do.
Well, and thank you particularly, Councilmember Kay, for your leadership on those initiatives. But I'm also saddened to report that there was yet another bobcat that died recently. This one was not struck by a vehicle, but was found deceased in emaciated condition. So again, we sent out and waiting for the results of the necropsy. Where was that, Jim?
That's close to where the other one was killed, right? West Beach?
Yeah. So that one, this latter one, may be more likely the result of some, disease or other condition, yeah.
Well, and Jim and his team often say that the root cause of some of the traffic accidents are because the animal is weakened and slowed, and otherwise incapacitated by being filled with SGAs. So we have to continue those efforts aggressively.
That's a fair point. They could have just been weakened.
Meredith, thank you. I would note that there continue to be some areas identified by the community where we need to do a better job. We need to do a better job of responding to citizen concerns and improving our service level, and we will endeavor to do so. There is still an issue with regard to the number of respondents and a whole host of things in communicating what the town is doing more broadly to the general community. KICA is more able to do that because it has direct emails for every single member. You essentially have to opt in to the town's communications channels. We can push them out as many directions as we want or can, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we will get to everybody. We'll do our level best, and if people have creative ideas and suggestions, we certainly appreciate the fact that with many of these communications initiatives, KICA does allow us to, or does put onto their website things that we are doing, and vice versa. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
Okay, updates. I'll start. A few things. One is, and this was approved by the Ways and Means Committee earlier this morning, does not need to come before council, but just to put on the radar screen of the community that we'll be conducting some additional tree maintenance and aesthetic improvements, tree health work along Kiowa Island Parkway. Brian, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we have any update?
No update on the exact
Okay.
timeline of schedule yet, but they'll be able to start pretty immediately, and they'll kind of chip away a couple days at a time.
So this is an extension of ongoing work the town has been doing to improve its right-of-way areas along public roads. More recently, people have seen what we've done on the first phase of the roundabout, which is a lot of cleanup-related work and tree health-related work. Next spring, we'll deal with some landscaping-related issues. This falls on the heels of work that was done along Beachwalker Drive earlier in the year. This is a much more extensive project and will have some traffic impacts. So speaking of communications, Meredith and her team will put out notices in advance. It's estimated by the contractor that this could take as many as 10 days. Over the course of a couple of weeks, not necessarily 10 consecutive days to complete all of this work, but it's a fairly extensive amount of work.
And where will it be?
Pardon?
Where exactly?
It's essentially the 2-mile stretch of Kiowa Island Parkway from the roundabout to the main gate, in the front main intersection. Most of that is on the first mile plus until you get to the bridge, from the roundabout to the bridge. The second thing I wanted to update council members on, as you may recall at the last meeting, we approved the conveyance of a third of a mile of Betsy Carrison Parkway that is public property of the state. The portion of Betsy Carrison Parkway from the roundabout to Resurrection Road. It encompasses the causeway and the culvert, the first part of Betsy Carrison Parkway, and certainly the inbound section on the other side of the median here. It's still some issues we've got to work through on the other portion with the county, but that accepting conveyance was conditioned upon obtaining a satisfactory inspection report, which I don't know if Brian, I see he left. He was supposed to have circulated that. I don't know if that is. Okay. Should send that, but the state undertook last month, or maybe mid or late October, report an inspection of the causeway. And it all came back, all items were not just fair, they were all good. So that's reassuring. What we had been advised of previously was that the expected life of the box culvert and causeway was 75 years, and it was constructed in 2005. What I would also note is that one of the things we would do pretty quickly is the only work that we would necessarily do at the outset is some restriping, and so there's a better turn lane in and out of the front of the municipal center, which we haven't been able to get the state to do heretofore. We could think about doing a complete, even though the road is in good enough condition, about a complete remilling and repaving in conjunction with the Civic and Cultural Center project, because that would allow use of ATAX dollars. We don't have to do that. Brian had gotten an estimate from one service provider, high-level estimate on the cost, which I think I'd mentioned to you, Councilmember Berner, was on the range of $1 million to repave, remill and repave that third-mile stretch, which seemed a little high. A couple things in that regard. One, there were some other elements in there that weren't necessary or critical, more than 100,000 worth. Plus, this particular service provider is known for bidding high at the outset and then often adjust down afterwards. But that's a data point to know that outside, we should have the cost of dealing with this maybe upwards of $1 million. Probably less than that over some period of time, but then that would have a lifespan of several years. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. Two other matters. One, I'm not going to belabor it here, but I do want to touch upon some issues related to the proposed recommendations made by the Planning Commission with regard to a new beachfront overlay. The main thing to note is that there is a public workshop on this issue tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. And I encourage anybody who is interested in this matter to attend and participate in that. This, contrary to what may have been conveyed or represented by some, is this has been almost a year-long process, starting with the council's planning commission, or strategic planning retreat last January, in which we discussed enhancing the regulatory tool set to address the development issues along the beachfront in order to protect maritime forest, to protect wildlife habitat, to protect vegetative and topographic characteristics, to protect against the impact of increasingly intense storms and storm surge, and to protect the aesthetics and character of Kiowa Island from a development perspective. It's intended to do all of that. Now, we talked about it in January in public meetings. The Planning Commission has held numerous public meetings around this, including workshops. The council had approved this on first reading with the understanding that there would be additional views and perspectives offered, and that's why you have two readings before you approve an ordinance. And at their last council meeting, we had a public hearing. We did not act on second reading, and it's not on the agenda for today's meeting. So this is an ongoing, continuing process, and we continue to get good input. But I do want to emphasize that this has been a fairly public process. It's the nature of the beast that people often don't pay attention until it's close to reality. So it is what it is in that regard. We could probably do a better job of communicating, once again, get to communications, but these are all public notice meetings. We continue to welcome constructive input, and I myself, I don't want to speak for any of my fellow council members, haven't reached any conclusions about what we might approve on second reading with regard to the beach overlay, but I'm directionally comfortable with what has been proposed by the Planning Commission, and we should, I'm certainly personally willing to consider some calibrations necessary to respond to, I think, some thoughtful suggestions made by some community members, but to be continued in that regard. The last item I want to touch upon now is the town, this was the second one we'd held, had a meeting, was it a week ago Monday, with representatives of the construction general contractor industry. Early Monday morning, probably had, Stephanie, 2-3 dozen, maybe more representatives. Very informative, a number of respects, a good exchange of information. One issue that really came out of that I want to touch upon really follows on the heels as well of a meeting that I don't see the planning director and I had with one of the regimes about some landscaping work and some other updates to multifamily regime common property as well as potential improvements to their parking areas. And there continues to be an extraordinary and unfortunate amount of confusion about the relative roles of the town and KICA and the ARB with regard to permitting for zoning, for zoning permits and building permits. And we've got to figure out a way to get past this because it's causing not just consternation and confusion, but it necessitates, in some cases, contractors, property owners having kind of go back to the well and redo their work. This is a property on Eugenia, and it's a survey prepared by Schwacke. There's a note in the survey, and it talks about lot coverage issues, building, concrete, all the stuff, 32.9% lot coverage, the secondary coverage elements. But there's a notation here that says the required setbacks may be designated and or varied by the Kiowa Island Architectural Review Board. The Architectural Review Board reserves the right to grant variances respecting setback guidelines and or to expand the buildable area. So I just want to make crystal clear for the record that the town's Bureau of Zoning Administration is the only entity which can grant variances from municipal zoning standards. Full stop.
And rights away.
It's unfortunate terminology, but it does cause confusion. People will say, well, the ARB granted me a variance. If it's an applicable town municipal zoning standard, the Board of Zoning Appeals is the only entity which can grant a variance. The ARB, to the extent that the general covenants are applicable, can adjust or modify its standards and guidelines. The ARB has no authority to modify in any way, shape, form, or fashion municipal zoning standards, full stop. And the community just needs to understand that. The other issue, people say, well, I have to get before I can go to the town, I have to have ARB approval. I'm reading from the ARB's Designing with Nature guidelines from 2024. And it says, complete sets of construction documents displaying the ARB stamp of approval must be used in following all normal procedures administered by the town of Kiowa Island for obtaining zoning and building permits. That is simply untrue. There is no requirement in complying with municipal law, licensing requirements, zoning permits, and building permits that ARB approval be obtained. Whether or not ARB approval needs to be obtained, whether the general covenant restrictions are applicable, is between the property owner and the ARB. Doesn't involve the town. So it continues to be an issue. I don't know quite how we'll solve for it, but in part informs what we're going to talk about a little bit later today with regard to the Design Review Board. That's it for my comments. Councilmember Berner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, had a lot of work going on this week. I guess I'm wincing because my back hurts. Spent some time going through the architect's contract to improve it with respect to providing us greater control of timing, greater control of the schedule, greater control of the costs for the upcoming civic and cultural facility that has commenced design work. So I wanted to that was a big effort by my part to make sure the contract was reading well, and I'm satisfied to where it ended up. As the mayor alluded to earlier, he and I, as well as Ms. Tillerson, met with the new EMS chief. We went through the response times, and I have to tell you, I'm very happy to say the response times on the island are pretty darn good. They are really good, but it's not that we're not going to try to reduce them, but they're in good shape, particularly when you factor in faster response times by the fire department or by the beach patrol. We are in pretty decent shapes, especially now that we have a hospital in our backyard. I'm quite happy to where we are with respect to emergency safety items. Leading into the safety, the marathon's coming December 13th. Spent a lot of time getting prepared for it. Tomorrow we're going to have a bomb preparation meeting, unattached backpack meeting about what to do if we happen to come across that. New zone maps for the emergency response team were submitted just yesterday or the day before. We're going to continue to go through talking about that. I'll be attending many meetings and communicating or coordinating with the CERT response team. But the most important thing I wanted to let the community know, our website has a list of the road closures. I really suggest that all of the residents look at the road closures, because when they're closed, you're not getting through. So I just wanted to let the community know about that. And I know from my pickleball friends, they had trouble last year. The road was closed and they couldn't get to play the pickleball. So once the road is closed, the road is closed. So please, everybody in the community, go to the website and check out when the roads are going to be closed across the island. That's it. Thank you.
May I just add from the meeting with the EMS chief, and appreciate that update. One of the things we learned is their kind of staffing of Station 10 here has changed. And what's the terminology they use, Stephanie? They had a dynamic staff. I don't, the kind of the phrasing, all of it, but the bottom line is station-based. There's going to be a 24/7 presence there at this, where before they were moving it around depending on
Very good
demand.
point. That's a big deal. That's a
And one of the other things Stephanie had pulled together, which was very helpful, and I'm sorry I don't have that information in front of me, collecting kind of the data regarding the number of EMTs, advanced EMTs, and paramedics that we have on the island through from St. John's Fire District and Barrier Island Ocean Rescue. And so we're blessed with an extraordinary amount of first responder capability. The issue that has always been more of a challenge has simply been transport, not initial response. But now, as a result of the station-based program that the new Charleston County EMS director has put in place for Station 10, as well as MUSC, we're going to be substantially enhanced and upgraded in that regard.
And I referenced earlier the fire department and the beach patrol because they are also first aid trained, and they also have life-saving devices on both of their vehicles. So in the interim before the EMS arrives, they're going to take very good care of you. So I'm really happy with where we stand right now.
I shared at a prior council meeting, if I can jump in real quick,
You're right,
that
you did.
when my wife broke her wrist on the beach, it was like the president called 911. I mean, there was Kika security, there was resort security, there was beach patrol, there was the fire department, there was EMS, all within moments of us calling. And beach patrol was closest. They did the initial response, and they all are certified. EMS transports, that's the big difference.
That is the difference here.
Councilmember Kay.
Okay, a couple of things. Tacking on to Russ's comments about the marathon next week. We've got our Go Green subcommittee, part of the Resiliency Committee, been working with the resort on a major initiative. I've mentioned this before, but now we're almost upon the actual date. A composting initiative that the size of which has not been attempted before, And so we've got Fran Williams, who's the chair of that subcommittee, has corralled a whole host of volunteers from across the island, including some of us here up on the dais who are going to be helping out with this initiative. So, so good luck on the marathon. I hope it's tremendous success. Secondly, we have a new program called Kiowa Conversations. Think of it as a sister program to Our World. Our World, as most of you are aware, encompasses this huge diversity of programs. Kiowa Conversations and Our World is a KICA initiative. Kiowa Conversations will be a town initiative, and it will be like Our World in that it will be held on Thursday afternoons here when Our World is not being held, and it will be dedicated exclusively to topics on wildlife, the environment, resiliency, and sustainability. We're going to have speakers from local colleges. We're going to have from staff. We'll have expertise from across all of those four different areas that will come and will increase the attention to and our focus on is resiliency and sustainability. So we're pretty excited about that. We'll be doing a lot of communication, and that will kick off in January and continue then hopefully going forward. It'll take the form of presentations here at Town Hall, but there will also be workshops off-site. There'll be field trips, for instance, up to the big, huge recycling center up in North Charleston. So there'll be a wide variety of ways for people to get involved. So stay tuned on that. And then I also wanted to piggyback a little bit on what the mayor addressed on the beach overlay district. In much of the communication across the town, the beach overlay district has been lumped with a marsh overlay, a proposed marsh overlay district, and they are totally separate initiatives, and so it is a mistake to lump them together. As far as the marsh is concerned, there have been people who have been working on marsh projects for the last several years. My own experience with it goes back about 6 years when we started working on the Marsh Management Comprehensive Plan. I believe that you were at the end stages of that. That plan was passed in 2023. In the meantime, there are studies that have been underway, and projects, whether they're involving KICA or the Conservancy or the town or the resort. All of these groups are working in concert to study the marsh, protect the marsh, and enhance the marsh. We had a study just last week where Lee Bundrich from the Conservancy reviewed exhaustively the study of island mapping and marsh mapping that will be used as a tool as we continue to study this further. We've got Weston and Sampson currently underway, gathering and reviewing data. They're looking primarily at stormwater management, rainfall, storms, all of the various sequelae that goes with that. There's an update that's due later this week, and then we're going to determine our next steps. And the Planning Commission Resiliency Committee is their point. Jean Babinak has been put on top of this effort. And then we've got the Planning Department that is reviewing rear setbacks all along the marsh. What you all need to know that we are all acutely aware of is the complexity of the marsh. The beach is complex enough, but multiply that several times and you've got the marsh. And I think it's also important that the community knows that there's a consistency and a growing knowledge base among the people who've been involved with these projects. We've got folks like Lee Bundrich from Conservancy, John Taylor and his staff, Lucas Hernandez, who's with Weston and Sampson, has been working on stormwater and marsh projects since the sea level rise report back in 2017. We've got Nicole Elko, who was primarily responsible for the Marsh Management Comprehensive Plan, who can be called in as a consultant at any point in time. We've got Planning Commission members, Joanne, Larry, Iwan, Jean, you, me, and now we've got folks on town council. So the continuum of oversight over this initiative is really, really important. And it just, I hope that it comforts the community to know that there is a solid group of people who appreciate the complexity of this project and who are working on it, will continue to work on it really, really hard. So as far as lessons learned that have been brought up in some of the communication, know that we will be very careful and very thorough and very methodical and very transparent as we move forward with a project that's going to go on for years and years. That's it for me.
Councilmember Farrell.
I'll just pick up on the marsh part too, with saying two things. One, again, it's really important to understand that the beach overlay initiative and the marsh overlay would be something significantly different because the challenges in the marsh are very different from what happens in the beach. Much more dynamic, they're much more complicated. And so we intentionally separated those out. And even if you look at just the river part of the marsh, like around Inlet Cove, there are additional issues there that actually might be a separate overlay district there too, because quite frankly of erosion of the riverbed. But it is very complex. We're taking a science-based approach to this. And again, what we're trying to do is do things that are outlined in our comprehensive plan in multiple places. There's one specific environmental section that's in there that covers some of the things, but everything we're doing is embedded in the other 10 sections in terms of protecting the marsh, protecting the beachfront, protecting the river, and ultimately protecting the quality of life and the environment here that we all come to treasure. Second thing on environmental, even though I'm not the environmental person, if you haven't signed up to do a volunteer at the manufactured wire reef set up down here, please do that. I did that last Monday. Myself and a team of 2 others had no experience at all. We made 12 manufactured wire reefs in 2 hours. I think there were 7 or 8 different teams all doing it at the same time. If you eat oysters, you know somebody who eats oysters, you've heard of the word oyster, please volunteer and go down and do that. It's a really a nice way to spend a couple of hours. You need no skills. They'll show you exactly what to do. And there's already some in the river you can see at low tide. So they've already started taking some of those wire reefs and putting them in. But it was a very satisfying, rewarding.
I think most people know, but that the Kiowa Conservancy.
Yes.
And that facility is just next to where the old Rosebank Farms stand was. There's a little dirt road that drives back there.
But in the updates from the Conservancy, the town, or Kika, you can see where to
And
sign up in there. And please look for it and sign up because it was actually very fun. Okay. First, from my standpoint, we did a first budget review this morning for the first 4 months of the year. The budget is in great shape. We are 37% ahead of budget in terms of revenue. That equates to about $700,000. And then our expenses are also up, but they're not up nearly as much. They're only up 28%. And so very, very healthy. That also allows us to, at this point, bank another $2 million into our general fund or our reserves, if you will. So again, we're doing very well with our budget and our financial health for the town. We're going to talk about business licenses again here today. We talked about business licenses this morning at Ways and Means. We approved a new schedule. It's important to know 2 or 3 things. One is we're just trying to cover our costs with business license. And so we look at what we're getting in and what we get out, and we're not trying to make any money, we're just trying to cover the costs. We are, there's a state requirement that we have to follow about certain procedures in this, and one of them is we can only raise prices every couple of years, and we haven't raised prices in 4 years, and we can only do it every 2 years. So this is our chance. And with what's happened with inflation, with services and goods over the past couple of years, it makes sense for us to kind of follow and maintain our discipline around covering our costs.
Councilmember Farrell, may I suggest a slight clarification?
Sure.
Or correction of the record? Our business license fees are not intended to just cover our cost. they are a significant source of general fund revenues. I think what you may be referring to is the change that is proposed.
Yes,
Is intended to be revenue neutral.
Thank you. That's important to know. Yeah, it is. It's revenue neutral. Thank you very much for that clarification. And then something we've been working on for the better part of a year, our financial processes and procedures assessment. We used to call it an audit, but this is the first one, so it's an assessment. We have an audit committee meeting next Monday. At that meeting, we've talked with a consultant. We've given feedback to the consultant on their report. We should finalize that report and review that at the audit committee meeting next Monday, and hopefully we'll then be able to present to the town both an executive summary and the full audit report at our January meeting. But short version is she was very complimentary about where we are. There are some changes that she suggested. We basically agreed with virtually all the changes that enhance things, and many of the things did not have material consequence, but we see the value in enhancing our processes and procedures. And so you'll see, again, the full report and the executive summary in early January. That's all for me, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Spencer.
Thank you. So first of all, we had a very successful Veterans Day event the day before Veterans Day. Thanks for your support for that, Mayor Bell, and thanks to Danielle Hensley and Meredith Blair for putting it together. And we had really positive comments from the people who showed up, both veterans and people who support veterans. So it was nice to see that happen. The next Infrastructure Public Works Committee is December 11th. Normally it's the Thursday of the first week, but it's going to be the Thursday of the second week from 10 to 11 this month. I think anybody that lives on Kiowa got a letter from Kiowa Island Utility about the proposed rate increase. We did have a special call IPWC Infrastructure Public Works Committee meeting and met with KAU and discussed this and took a real hard look at it. Thanks to Phil Mancusi, Unguro especially, who put together some great questions for us to provide to them that they discussed with us. The short answer is we had no issue at the end of the discussion in what they were proposing. And we had some pretty rigorous, if you know who's on my committee, like Dave, we had some pretty rigorous look at it. One thing that was really clear that came out of it is the scrutiny the state puts on it, the Public Utilities Commission. At the time we met 3 weeks ago or so, KIU had already gotten, I think it was 764 questions back from the state. And it's retroactive, it's not forward-looking, so KIU is looking in late 2026 to replace the main that goes along Kiowa Island Parkway. They have to do that out of Hyde, and then they can go try to recover that cost from their investment afterwards through a process like this. And so the state looks back in their books, goes through them thoroughly. There's a lot of energy that's put into this at the state level on our behalf. So that was insightful to understand that better and understand how hard it is for KIU to raise their rates to start with, because it's expensive. It's going to cost them about $750,000 they shared with us to go through this process by the time they're done with all the analysis that goes on. So there's a lot of scrutiny. I'm glad, Mayor Belt, that you talked about first reading a little bit. And I think that's sometimes really lost, and I'm glad you foot-stomped that. I don't know if I completely appreciated it until I was on council. But first reading doesn't mean that we're about to approve something. You know, that it just helps us progress the process as much as anything for something that we think is directionally on target, and more actions need to come. And the example you used with the beach overlays is a good example. You know, lots of things are happening after that first reading to get it right. So I think that it's just important to understand that just because council approves something on first reading doesn't mean that what you saw is what's going to get approved. There's a lot that still can happen in many cases.
And Mr. Spencer, can I add into that too, that when you see a sign go up in your neighborhood, that's the same thing. It's a notice that something is happening. Please find out and get involved. It's not something's about to happen. It's another way to notify the public that we're considering an idea or a change. And so signs are the same thing as, they come before the first reading, actually. So there's a lot of things that happen before we make a final decision.
That's a great point. Thanks for injecting that. And then my final comment, I mean, I'll self-identify. I agree with the mayor. I think directionally the beach overlay is something that we should be pursuing. There's a lot of details to work out. There's a lot of engagement to happen still. There's a lot of inputs to be gained. But it was clear to me when I was elected, both during my campaign and since, that this is something that's important to the community to take care of the points that the mayor brought out. Again, if you've got opinions, please engage through the workshop or other forums to do that. But it's clear to me the community wants us to take actions like this, whatever that turns out to be when we're done.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Thank you, Councilmember Spencer. But another ordinance change that into our zoning code that the council had approved a couple of months ago is with regard to cell tower ordinances.
right.
Any update with regard to
Thanks for
drop
asking.
and swap? And
I
those-
should make that a standard item. Yes. What was it, John? A week ago? It was just a week ago today. We met with Crown Castle, who has 4 of the sites on the island, and did site surveys about how to move forward. The first site they're going to address is the Ocean Course site, because that's the biggest issue right now. And so the planning department with Mr. Taylor and his team are working through the process right now to get that approved and increase coverage for that part of the island. The site survey we did last week was 3 other sites that are Crown Castles. And it was, like you said, drop and swap is when you put up the new tower and then you take down the old tower, ideally. Sometimes you have to bring in a temporary capability if there's constraints. And so the planning staff and I walked around with them and, boots on the ground, took a look at, what needs to happen, what constraints exist with the current sites. These are not new sites. These are existing sites, which are primarily in industrial areas or away from residential. But Crown Castle confirmed that they do have support from at least one carrier to support these new sites and increased coverage capacity and range, which means they'll get them all once they put up the new tower. But that triggers their capital process to be able to start moving ahead on upgrading the towers, which is great progress. It still takes time. It's probably going to be 18 months, 2 years until we see the result of this, because that's what time it takes for the construction and the swap overs and stuff like that. But it is moving along very crisply in my observation from having done this for a bunch of years in my prior life.
And did I hear you correctly? They would do one at a time, not all 4 at the same time, or? how
So
does that work?
it's a good question. The Ocean Course is being fast-tracked because there's been issues with that location. The other 3 could happen at once. John, did you?
I didn't get the impression that they would all happen at the same time based on constraints.
Yeah.
However, the ones that could go fastly,
I'm telling you.
I didn't get the impression that they all would happen immediately at the same time, but the ones that could be fast-tracked based on the least constraints would be able to go forward.
That was kind of my understanding also, is that they
Yeah.
could happen at the same time,
Yeah.
but they won't be tied to each other.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both.
I just note that, again, it's an issue that I had raised when we were considering this. Yes, we want to enhance cell coverage, but there are obviously trade-offs with regard to this. I'm personally not yet persuaded that we, in addition to the SOAR rail, the 165-foot tower we have at SOAR rail, that we need an additional 4 150-foot towers. But I'm not the RF engineer, so.
And you're not the CFO, and I'm not trying to be trite saying this, but the capital to do this is tight, and
Yeah.
if they're investing, they think it's needed.
Okay. Thank you all. We're moving on to old business. The first agenda item is.
Mr. Mayor, may I provide a few updates?
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. The
promise
town
I'll-
administrator's update,
I promise
staff
I'll be
update.
very
No,
quick.
no.
You guys have already mentioned, I believe, so just encouraging people with regards to the beach overlay. The planning commission's having the workshop starting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Encourage everyone to come participate and listen in on that. A couple operational enhancement or redos. Our current GoGov, our current Kiowa Island app, if you don't have it on your phone, we are looking at improving that. So we're working with a company called GoGov. So hopefully we'll be able to roll that out within first quarter of next year. We're also working on redoing our website. It's taking a little bit longer, but we're in the sitemap process, so hopefully we're rolling that new website out first quarter of next year. And currently, we have enhanced our Citizen Serve dashboard. So hopefully those that utilize that permitting program on the town side have seen those improvements. In addition, I just wanted to let everyone know that the arts and cultural events are next. We have 2 events in December, but the next upcoming one is going to be on December 9th, The Sound of Charleston at 7:30 at Seabrook Island Clubhouse. That's the holiday special. So if you're interested, please go online, reach out to our program manager, Caroline Wall, for that. And then last, just an update on our water damage. As you guys recall, we had that, and the cost was roughly $231,000 plus or minus. But Ms. Schubert, our finance director, reported that our insurance company have closed it out, and they are reimbursing us everything with the exception of $3,000 deductible. So we will be getting back $228,357 minus our $3,000 deductible. That's it.
Wow, that's great.
Thank you. And now moving on to old business.
Can I ask you one question before you move on?
Yeah.
Ms. Tilson or Mr. Berner, were there changes to the piping that we needed to do so we didn't have that same galvanic effect? Did we identify those, and has that been done, or is that in the
It was
future?
inspected, but the answer to your question is there were not changes. The inspection indicated you did not have the dissimilar materials that caused the leak and then the flood.
So we're okay with?
We're okay for, yes. The only 2 that they did change was, of course, the one that had that created the flood, and then they found the second location at the contractor's lobby
there
in
was
that
one.
bathroom. That one was changed, but
That's
the other ones were fine.
So we're great. Super. Thank you.
And that reminds me to ask about the status of a sensor and automatic shut-off, that we were exploring that. Do you recall?
Yes, and I know Bruce or Brian had looked into that, and I thought that we were moving forward with that. Did you guys want to speak on that? Because I don't know the status.
The water sensor, if you will. Most of the plumbing contractors we talked to carry a commercial license were familiar with installing on residential occupancies, because that happens quite frequently out here. They did know of one company that had the device for commercial entity. However, the largest one we could get was 2 inches, and the pipe coming in is 4 inches. We did find one that was 4 inches, but we don't have any data to, is it worth purchasing? Does it really work the way it's supposed to? We looked for reviews and tried to figure it out, and we kind of stopped at that point because we had no data to back it up. We couldn't find any test data or anything else that would show us that it functions properly. We can move ahead with it. The plumbing contractor said he'd install it, but we just didn't feel real comfortable with the product not being able to find test data for it.
So Bruce, I just know from my own involvement, we've had in commercial construction, electronically transmitting like water meter data such that the water usage would be electronically transmitted to a central security location that would then send out an alarm to whoever the constable was or the maintenance guy to go there and take care of that. So that kind of electronic data transmission does exist even on 4-inch and larger lines. I understand your comment about 2-inch, but
Yeah.
shut-off may not exist that you're talking about, but the data transmittal does. That can happen.
Yeah, we were looking for automatic shut-off.
Yes, I
type
understand,
of
but
thing,
since the automatic shut-off won't work, the next backup would be what I'm talking about,
Yeah, I
data
mean-
transfer.
Yeah, well, we could look at that. I mean, I'm not familiar with that system, but I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I haven't done any research
All
on
right,
it.
just a suggestion as another item to look into.
We'll take a look at it.
And I know you're
move
talking
forward.
commercial versus residential, but I had one in my last house, was really glad I did. when the water heater leaked.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
And I just got notified by Public Works that I guess they are working with Coastal Burglary Alarm to install water alarms under the sink for less than $1,700. So it would notify us if water's detected. So we are doing that.
Now moving on to old business. And the first item of old business, it appears in some respects to be first a new business because it's first reading, and this is our revisions to the existing noise ordinance that we had previously had on the agenda. It had some discussion but tabled for future consideration, and that's what is before us now. That's in tab 4. It's not really properly labeled. It's not an ordinance to establish noise standards within the town. It's actually, this is an ordinance to revise our existing noise ordinance. Where we'd had extensive discussion about this the last time, and what you may recall is there were some questions about the kind of the decibel levels, areas to measure from. There was a presentation from, I think, was it Fran Williams, about from the committee with regard to issues related to, were brought up by Ms. Hayes, related to two-cycle gas-powered engines and their environmental impacts and cost-related issues. Invited council members to kind of review where we were and make any additional changes or suggestions. Council member Spencer, in the interim, had requested the inclusion of the proposed prohibition on landscaping equipment using two-cycle gas-powered motors and to be phased in over a 6-month period. So that's where we are now. My understanding, Stephanie, is we had a request from the resort to make some minor modifications to the resort golf course landscaping.
That's correct. The request that came in from the resort is based on our current ordinance right now. For routine golf maintenance, we have that they can start at 6 o'clock. For blowing of parking lots and paths, they can start at 6:30. And for non-routine, they can start at 7. Currently, what we did was we were proposing to essentially have everything start at 6:30, but they've asked if they can go back. We worked with them. When we came up with these 3 timelines, the group at the time that was working on the noise ordinance worked with the resort, came up with this compromise with the 6, 6:30, and 7. They're just asking if we can go back to what was originally approved. In the current, what's currently in the current ordinance, as opposed to right now, the suggestion is to start at 6:30 for everything.
With that as a background, anything else?
The other thing I shared with you all is that you did receive email from Sammy with Arbor Care in regards to the two-cycle motors. He just wanted clarification in terms of with that. Also comply with like tree care companies. He was talking about, he used bucket trucks, aerial lifts, dump trucks, etc. They don't really use, I guess leaf blowers. So he's just trying to understand as if that requirement would be required of kind of arbor care or tree care companies will fall in that category as landscape maintenance. That was his those were the 2 comments that I received.
With that as background, I would entertain a motion for approval of ordinance 2515 on first reading.
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
There's a number of things to go through.
Yep.
First one, I think, is an easy one, so I'll go there first. So, Steph, on section 15-805, prohibited activities, paragraph E, paren 3, talks about golf course maintenance. And the easy part is it just says it's prohibited between 7 p.m. and 6:30, and notwithstanding what you just said about changing the hours. But it's only Monday through Saturday, which would mean it would be not prohibited at any time on Sunday. So we have to change that from Monday to Sunday.
Yes, and if we wanted to, yeah, 'cause essentially we took out the Sunday and town recognized holidays, but if we wanted to go back to what was originally captured in the original one, I believe that would cover.
It would.
Correct.
We discussed this, and first I would note that I'm certainly supportive of the resort's recommended changes to adjust maintenance with regard to golf courses. And yes, there's no question that golf course maintenance will occur every day of the week.
Right.
It's just, people are on golf courses on Sunday mornings just like they are Saturday mornings. and-
Right, but right, the way it reads now, it could happen at any
Yeah,
hour
yes,
of
we-
the
we-
day.
We would need to make those adjustments. Other questions or comments?
Well, the other question is with respect to the two-cycle motor prohibition for cutting down trees. I kind of have a feeling you can't do that with electric chainsaws.
They do make four-cycle and electric chainsaws, and the four cycles are actually a better product. They have more consistent chain speed and stuff like that.
Well, what about the noise, though? The whole thing here is a noise,
Significantly lower
yeah, that's-
With the four-cycle?
materially.
so
The
then,
noise and the environmental, just the inefficiency and the pollution of a two-cycle motor.
so we should be changing this to allow 4 cycles then for tree.
No, this is only a specific prohibition on the use of two-cycle gas
understand
power engines.
So we would then not allow a two-cycle motor or two-cycle chainsaw for tree removals.
As drafted, proposed by Councilmember Spencer, it would prohibit after 6 months the use of any, two-cycled gas power engine device, regardless of usage. Whether we want to adjust that or not, my original focus had been on two-cycle gas-powered leaf blowers, which are the most prevalent, prevalently used device. I'm not as personally familiar with two-cycle versus four-cycle for various other devices, but as written, as proposed by Councilmember Spencer with this addition that's included in the materials, there would be after 6 months, a prohibition on any two-cycle gas-powered engine device.
So I guess my question is for Lance. The decibel levels that are suggested in here, are those consistent with Seabrook or Isle of Palms or Sullivan's Island?
I think Mayor Belt looked at those, but I did my own research, and actually I was a little bit more aggressive starting the conversation on those decibel levels. More of my research was referenced to California, which is more aggressive in general on things like this. At the end of the discussion, with the research the mayor had done and I had done, I agreed with his recommendation that they were appropriate.
And it kind of depends on which decibel levels you're talking about. The general residential and commercial hours are,
1584
yes,
is what I was
but I'm saying
looking
that
at.
residential and commercial, the decibel levels there are, for the most part, with a couple of minor exceptions, consistent with our current ordinance. They do not change our current ordinance. Our current ordinance is more complicated than it needs to be because it adjusts the decibel level depending on which day of the week it is, which seems overly burdensome from an enforcement standpoint to try to figure out which day. So there's just consistency. But the 70 and 60 is consistent. And we did look at a lot of other communities, and there are variations. California cities tend to have sometimes lower decibel limits. Some communities, particularly large cities, will have slightly higher decibel limits. This seems to be kind of generally consistent, and this was originally drawn from, I believe, Mount Pleasant in the original decibel level. That's not the only guidepost, obviously, but just to be clear, the decibel changes in the residential and commercial resort areas are not changed meaningfully from status quo.
My other question is about penalties, and whether or not we feel these are sufficient to deter. I think they're consistent with a lot of our other penalty structures
You know,
for
it's-
other infractions of ordinances, but are they sufficient?
Well, a couple things in that regard. One, we are limited by state law from the amount of the fine that we can impose. The maximum fine per violation is $500 under state law. Don't have any wiggle room in that regard. We generally have, as a matter of policy, the code enforcement policy that we had implemented generally provides for kind of a graduated fining schedule. So that's what's reflected here.
I had similar concerns, especially for at least perceived deeper pockets of developers or commercial or something like that. What was pointed out to me when I brought it up was the ability to revoke a license, a business license, or issue a stop work order, which I think is a real threat to.
That would be the heavier hammer than the amount of the fine.
But at this point, we don't feel that we need to go there?
It's in here
It's
that they
in
can
here.
do it.
It's in here.
Well, excuse.
Now, the question is doing it, which will be a whole nother discussion if there's an issue, and
So
we all argue
I
about
have
that.
I have a philosophical question. I think I know the answer, but are we trying to minimize noise, eliminate two-cycle machines, or both? The reason I ask is I did my own scientific measurement. I live on the golf course. They're out there every day. Doing a great job, Roger. But this morning, they were trimming the edge of the sand traps with I'm sure it was a two-cycle trimmer. And the definition says that their property line, well, the property line is at the edge of my property where the lagoon is. So I'm 150 yards away, and the decibel level is under 50 decibels. They're using a two-cycle. So is it two cycles, or is it the noise, and I just want to make sure I understand what we're trying to accomplish.
So it's two cycle, and it's to accomplish two primary things. One is, yes, the noise. And I think the last time we took this up as a council, I recall a comment that four cycle is less noisy, so quieter than a two cycle. So there's a benefit. But the other, which I think is maybe more compelling at times, is the environmental considerations of two cycle. Four cycle or electric.
Yeah, they're stinky, for sure. Yeah.
It's spitting a lot of stuff out into the environment.
And kind of on the philosophical point, this quite gets there, but most we've kind of done an extensive review of all the literature regarding two-cycle gas power engines. For the most part, there are exceptions. Some do a better job of muffling noise than others. You're talking about devices that operate at 50 feet in the 75 to 85 decibel range, which is significantly higher than electric-powered, gas-powered, electric-powered leaf blowers. Also, the two-cycle engines, not only the polluting, they put out low-frequency and high-frequency noise. And it's the actual low-frequency noise that tends to penetrate walls and windows more so than high-frequency noise.
So, I mean, broadly, I'm supportive of, understand the philosophy, I'm supportive of all this. My concern is going to be, we're going to pass a noise ordinance, and people are still going to complain about the leaf blowers, but it's going to be well down, because again, this morning, it was below 50, which would have been in compliance with the two-cycle. They were working in the rain, by the way, just so you know. But
Thank you. I'd like to make a comment. As you'd asked me last time, Madeline, we were talking about this, we've done a complete inventory of all the tools we're using. We've come up with 3 tools that are 2 cycles, that are the smallest ones we've had, but they're the weed whippers, the edgers, and we don't have a problem with trying to go to 4 cycle for the weed whippers. We can't find any. So if somebody could want to help us figure out where that is, we have 4-cycle blowers. We've got a Japanese model that is not very durable, so we're still looking to do that. We would like to comply, but I'm not sure in 6 months we'll have the tools that we need to comply. More so, not on the noise part of it, but on the environmental environmental part of it or the gas part of it.
Yeah.
Councilmember Spencer, I mean, I don't know what your views are on this. Because of those kinds of issues, I would personally be more comfortable if the prohibition were on, at this juncture, on two-cycle gas-powered engine leaf blowers and limited to that for now, and then we can come back and revisit the expansion of other two-cycle engine products. I'm just not personally as familiar with all of those.
I'm looking at a 4-cycle right now on Amazon.
Four-cycle,
Weed whacker.
okay.
Doesn't say. And as a note, and I think we've discussed this before, but a reminder, our landscape contractor for the town went above and beyond the RFQ requirements, and they are all electric.
Well, that's a good point.
There are electric weed whackers, that is true. But they're probably more residential, but.
Well, this is a commercial,
Commercial company.
our contractor is a commercial landscaping company.
Oh, fair point, that's true. So, Mr. Warren, I do have a question. That big blower that's dragged behind, I'll say a tractor, that's not a two-cycle. What's generating the power for that?
It does have a gas engine.
It does. It is, that thing is loud.
4-cycle though.
It is four?
Four-cycle.
That thing is loud.
Yes, sir, it is.
Roger, you look like you had something else. Roger, you look like you had something else you wanted to add.
Doctor's orders.
Because from where I live on the golf course, it's not the weed whackers, it's that blower that is.
Do you play the golf courses?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay, those blowers allow you to play uninstructed with divots and all that. It's part of being on a golf course.
I understand.
There isn't anything that's made out there that would comply with what you're trying to do to get that job done. But the fortunate thing is, it gets done very early in the morning and it's done for the day.
And it does happen very quickly. It clears the path real
They're
quick.
very effective.
And I'm reminded of my father's frustration on some of these kinds of issues when he was base commander of McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas, where you had B-2s and other large airplanes, and people would build houses at the end of the runway line and then complain mightily about the noise and said, "Could you adjust the flight pattern?"
And if you find a golf ball in your yard, that happens too. Yeah, I don't know an
I
alternative.
guess I'm saying we're trying to get to where you want us to, but we need, when you talk about electric, the scope of what people have to do along the road is so minuscule compared to the golf course and the amount of batteries that you have to use and how much recharging you have to do. You know, I've got an electric blower at home. I get about one half of my driveway, and then I gotta go back and get another battery, so that it's not very efficient in a commercial situation.
I have the same experience.
And I didn't go after
You
those.
get the ego that I have. It lasts about almost an hour. I can definitely clear the whole property.
And I didn't know an alternative to that thing you pull around, so that's why I didn't bring it up.
So where are we? This is first reading. What I'm fine with the changes, the proposed changes to the golf course maintenance timing schedule proposed by the resort. Are there any other changes that have the sense of the council to make now or to consider prior to second reading?
So I'll ask a question. Under 804D, we give them 6 months from the state. What if we gave it a year? Would that be a bad thing, or would that give us more time to find new equipment, or would that not make any difference? Mr. Warren, you can answer too. But would that help you think?
I would support that.
I'm not against it.
It was the kind of the standard phase-in for other communities that have implemented this. It's Washington, D.C. did, was using.
1 year or 6 months?
1 year phase-in. the technology's evolved since then. I suspect most people could probably accomplish it in 6 months, but I don't have a problem for having a year-long phase-in either.
Yeah,
May I suggest we make it a year?
okay.
Okay. Any other further questions or comments?
The only other comment, I'm not sure, because I'm not quite sure what type of equipment, but that Sammy had asked about was tree care company would fall in the same category as landscape maintenance. He put, in our view, they are very different and much different equipment, with some similar equipment like leaf blowers or use the hedge trimmers. Other than those are type of work. He said, while we do tree pruning maintenance on many properties on Keel, we are not doing landscape maintenance. We are primarily pruning trees 10 feet high or taller. So I guess his question is, based on this definition, would his work fall under that definition in terms of the equipment that he may use?
In my mind, yes.
And so I guess then, based on what he has sent you all, I think his concern was, I guess he said it is impossible to remove a 90-foot tall pine tree over someone's home without the use of larger two-cycle motor equipment.
Why wouldn't a four-cycle work?
Yeah, you just use four-cycle then.
It's a better performing machine, to be honest.
I don't know how the four-cycle, I don't know if, a 90-foot tall pine tree over some, if using a four-cycle is easier.
If we're discussing whether it's,
Oh, Sammy,
Oh,
come
hi.
on
Sammy,
up.
there's Sammy.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yet.
Mr.
If
Milliman,
we're
you have the floor.
discussing between two-cycle, four-cycle, and then electric, as noted, if you're cutting out a big tree, you're got a lot of, energy that's being exerted. If you have someone 90 foot up in a tree and the battery goes out while you're in the middle of a cut, that becomes a major safety issue. You've got a tree that's hinged, that's not properly being able to be felled. The bigger concern also is, we run wood chippers. That's obviously over 80 decibels. So how are you going to delineate between landscape and guys mowing and blowing and tree care companies that are actually, running wood chippers, which is...
All right, let's separate that into two questions. So the first one, would a four-cycle chainsaw be okay for the guy 90 feet up?
Everything that's on the market right now that's used in a commercial aspect is two-cycle. They are introducing new products, but to be honest with you, the durability of things, it's not quite, the technology is not quite there on a commercial level. So more time would be appreciated on that while they catch up with things, because it's not quite there yet, in my opinion.
And then the wood chipper, that's a four-cycle motor, right? It's not a two-cycle.
Yeah, well, it's a diesel
Yes,
engine, yes, sir.
diesel engine,
That's
so
a what?
you're,
A diesel engine.
diesel, so that's fine.
So, I mean, you're talking, then you're breaking that down to, people that clear lots and construction sites that have, skid steers, backhoes, track hoes, all this sort of land clearing equipment and different things. I guess the question is, where do you, we just need clarification on what you're delineating between landscape and everything else, because I feel like we're in a different sector than what the landscape would be.
Well, again, I'll just go back to what is the language here. The definition of commercial landscaping, it doesn't clearly include tree-related work. You could argue that council that might squeeze it under that, but whether we want to further delineate. But the language regarding the prohibition on the use of two-cycle gas-powered engines applies to two-cycle gas-powered engines, period, regardless of what its use is. That's just the language that's proposed right now. So-
Right, and I don't think the wood chipper's a two-cycle engine, is that correct?
Correct.
So it wouldn't fall under this.
So it wouldn't fall under that.
Right,
So,
okay.
and I think the other part of the question, interestingly enough, what really drew our attention to this over the summer was a wood chipper. And so we had some data we collected when an issue was going on, that an industrial-sized wood chipper at Ocean Pines was, the way we were measuring it within the ordinance, compliant, if that's what the final takeaway was in your mind as well. So I think a wood chipper would be able to do its job within the way we've written the ordinance.
Well, it does raise a good issue, because something, if a wood chipper was not being used in conjunction with construction,
Right.
activity. And it wasn't clearly, it's not clearly defined as landscaping activity. Then does there is no specific prohibition, and there is no specific DBA limit that applies to that. It would fall under the general daytime, which it clearly would not satisfy, and whether that makes sense or not. What I might suggest is between now and second reading, if everybody's comfortable with kind of what we've already talked about, to take a further look at how the definition that we currently have and the specific prohibition on two-cycle gas-fired engines applies to things like tree-related work.
Okay. And I think part of where you're going with this, that in 15804, construction shall not exceed 80 and commercial landscaping shall not exceed 80. So in both scenarios, it's the same limit. So, and wood chipper was within that.
Well, but again, unless that wood chipper is being used in conjunction with construction activities, it was in this one instance, it would fall there. But if it wasn't clear that the tree-related work constituted commercial landscaping, taking down a tree may not one could reasonably conclude, based on the definition of commercial landscaping, that taking down a tree that was about to fall on a house would not constitute commercial landscaping activity, and therefore might not be covered at all.
I don't know, putting up a
Why don't we
tree
just
if
be
you're working
clear
with.
and just say, I mean, instead of, just say chippers are allowed. I mean, instead of all the fancy words, just be.
But I'm saying we haven't come up, what I'm suggesting is we'll try to address that with appropriate language between now and first reading. I can't come up with it right now.
I agree with what you're suggesting. I just, my only thought related to tree work is, if you're working with the ARB, putting up a tree is landscaping. So why wouldn't taking down a tree be landscaping also?
I understand your point, so
Yeah.
I'd be comfortable just saying chippers are excluded from this prohibition, and if we're okay with that, so let's not play with the words.
We just need to be careful with that, because that was the issue that kind of sparked this in the summer, was a chipper. So I just think we need to put more thought into it, like we're.
And I agree with that, because there are instances in which, this is addressed elsewhere, where if you're using a commercial high-grade wood chipper all day long, it's a very different impact if you're taking down several acres of trees as part of a commercial construction site versus taking down a single tree in a single-family property.
Right.
And that's why we need to.
I understand, on a construction site, the chipper's gonna be in the middle of the site, and you're not gonna be near the borderline or property line, but you're right, the chipper concern is on the residential street that's already built out.
Yeah. And there are options for, if you're felling a bunch of tall trees, to take them off-site and chip them, that as an option, and say that may not be the most cost-effective, but that is an option.
And in the 3 days we were wrestling through this, which was the beginning to the end of when the wood chipper was operating, so we didn't really resolve it at the time. The wood chipper actually was at the property line edge of the construction site, about 25 feet from a residential property line, so it was causing a problem.
Did you measure the DB?
We did.
What was it?
Craig's team did it. It was, what, 75? It was around in the low 70s, no, mid 70s.
So it would still pass?
It would. But it is a concern if you're doing it all day, multiple days. You know, what's that do to quality of life? So what's the trade-off?
Okay. Mr. Warren, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I thought I'd probably follow protocol and
Okay.
come up with it and sitting there yelling. I would just.
Sammy.
Yeah, I would just, after Sammy, after him coming up here, it dawns on me that I understand the desire to have a banning of two-cycle engines. But have we done anything to deal with contractors who are coming out here taking care of the needs that we have, and ask them, what does that mean to your business? There's a lot of two-cycle engine tools being used. An unintended consequence was they would just decide not to come out here if it's not worth it because of the change. And I just would encourage us to look at that. And if we can get from two-cycle to four-cycle, and it works for us with no difference, no loss of time, no loss of efficiency, and the quality of the work gets done in the same amount of time, there's no reason not to do it. But I'm not sure just saying, let's go from 4-cycle to 2-cycle and make that a law, or make it a rule, without some supporting data, would help. It would help me understand it more just in saying, you all as a group have decided you don't want to do 2-cycle engines.
I appreciate that comment. I guess my response would be, what we've done is looked at, one of the things we've done was looked at what a lot of other communities around the country had done in terms of implementing this. Most of those were focused on leaf blowers. I'm not familiar with as many that were across all 2-cycle engines. And it appears that there has been able to be a transition. In Washington, D.C., where I was last week, leaves have coming down and still coming down. You know, the entire city, which is major treescape and deciduous trees, they banned a year ago. The ban went into effect on 2-cycle gas-powered leaf blowers, and people are still able to move trees and adjust. The other thing I would note, the data point we have, it's limited, is when we went out with our RFP with a bunch of landscaping companies from the area, including a lot of them that provide services on the island. I believe all but one of them said that they could actually do, either at the outset or in a phased-in period, all electric. So I think they're already kind of planning for transitioning the capabilities. Nobody's really pushed them. But that's one reason why, I mean, I'm comfortable with the year phase-in rather than the 6 months.
Thank you.
I know our regime recently redid the landscape contract, and I talked to our regime manager also just to understand what her sense was from talking to those landscape companies.
And what did she say?
She thought that they could do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Time will tell.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
So I think where we are right now is agreement on the changes proposed on the golf course schedule, and then the change from 6 months to 12 months. That would be what we would be approving here on first reading, with an understanding that we will take a further look at the application of these standards to 2-cycle engines more generally, and particularly as they relate to tree work and wood chippers. Yes?
I have another question that came in that asked, how would KICA's maintenance division be categorized? They have sometimes their crew starts at 6 or 6:30. And right now, if they're defined under commercial landscaping, it looks like they won't be able to start to 8 a.m. So the question is just that how would they fall and how would they be defined?
I'd personally be happy to give Kika the same hours we give the golf course.
Golf course.
Large entity on the island.
I'm not opposed to it. I would simply, I guess, oppose the question as to whether Kika has the same need to start that early as a golf course does. Golf course has got golfers teeing off at 7 or 7:30, so you obviously have to prepare. We've got, I'm not sure if a Kika board member wants to chime in on that particular, I'm not going to put her on the spot.
Well,
but,
there's two.
Yes.
Oh, two. Yes, we have two.
Two. And this is from their COO.
Shannon?
Yeah, she said if we are classified as commercial, we lose at least an hour of work time. Both the golf courses and Kika operate within or directly bordering the residential area, so I don't see us differently in that respect. I think it would make sense to provide Kika with a carve-out or to include us with the golf course maintenance. We limit to the 7 a.m. start time for noise unless we are handling an emergency. So they're just asking if they can be considered with the same conditions as the resort in terms of golf maintenance.
I was going to ask Jody, but since it's Shannon.
I wouldn't have an issue with that.
I was going to ask Jody, but since it's Shannon asking, then we know what his opinion is.
Oh, yes. No, this would be Shannon.
Well, it's not, does number 3, does 1805 E3 become golf course and Kika maintenance, or do you have a separate category for maintenance? I'm not sure all of the same 3 categories that apply to the golf course maintenance would necessarily apply to Kika.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Question, we just lump golf
Yeah.
course maintenance, Kika maintenance, or have a separate little 4 if we were to carve out Kika, because we're having 3 different, 6, 630, and 7,
Right.
4. I'm not sure those same 3 categories work quite
Right.
the same way for Kika.
Yeah, I think that, based on this, she said that sometimes they do have a full maintenance team in by 7 a.m. with some that come in as early as 6 or 6:30. So
Is that from Shannon?
it's from Shannon. So she's asking if they can be considered the same as the resort, but if not, it sounds like their full team they come in at 7, but sometimes they do come at 6 or 6:30.
I guess maybe I'd like to understand a little more from Shannon or Jody as we go to the next reading is, are they doing it in residential areas? Are they doing it on the roadways? Where are they doing it? Because I think that might help us decide where it fits.
Well, I believe it's all their common property, so some is residential.
The common property,
Mr. DeStefano,
yeah.
would you like to come to the, and I would just note, I'd like to put this in the category of kind of revisiting between first
Yeah.
and second
Yeah.
reading. Not averse to doing some,
Carve out
attitude,
or-
but I'm not sure that the rationale for the earliest start time for the golf courses necessarily applies in the same way to Kika.
I would agree with that.
So before you start, Mr. Stefano, I do have something I wanted to add, because we haven't discussed paving. Now, referring to paving just the parkway, if I recall correctly, they paved at night the parkway. And this new ordinance, or these revisions would not allow that. And I think it's beneficial for the community to allow the main arteries, like the Parkway and Governor's Drive, to be paved at night, because otherwise it's going to have a great impact to traffic.
Mr. Burner, where is it?
Not here, it's not here, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah, unless some prior written approval is obtained. And that's exactly the type of thing, and I think there's some municipal work or utility work, town-approved community, other activities authorized by the town council. That's certainly, I agree, and I think that's the type of thing that would be
All right, so-
permitted in the ordinary course.
Okay, just want to make sure,
Yeah.
so that kind of exception would be allowed.
I think that's covered in section 12-106, which is referenced somewhere in there, that it's the temporary.
12-106?
Yeah, it wasn't included in our packet. I can send it to you.
12-106.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
I'm not a Kiko's board member now, but I was for 6 years, and this had come up. The reason they want to be able to start early is to blow the main roads before 7 o'clock, when the traffic, you don't want those blowers on the road after 7 o'clock in the morning with all the commercial traffic coming
Right.
in. So that's one of the things we specifically addressed at one point in time. Get the crew in early so they can get as much of the main roads done before the heavy traffic. That's why, that's, I think,
So
is
that
important.
makes a lot of sense, and that just gets to the point of if we add a new little carve-out for Kika, exactly what if it's work blowing on the roadway, before 7, you don't necessarily need to be blowing on all the leisure trails before, at 6 a.m., for example, that are particularly in residential.
And another thing, ironically, when we were paving the main roads and getting bids in, the bids were better at night work than they were at day work.
Sure.
So it was like, you want us to do it during the day, it's gonna cost you more money. So, thank you.
Okay.
Jen, have we addressed the questions that you had at the outset?
Thank you for asking, yes. The only question I have that came up after Sandy came up to speak was, I'm still not clear whether, how it's going to end up in terms of applicability to tree removal, and because it sounds like two-cycle engines are not able to be used for tree removal in a safe way. And so I guess that is the only remaining question.
And Jan, as we'd indicated, that's something that we will look further at between first reading and second reading, that specific issue. Thank you. Okay, so now it's the 12 months rather than a year, adding the hours for the golf course, for the golf course.
Right.
The golf course, and anticipate that we'll provide some carve-out for Kikas as well, and we'll look exactly what makes the most sense in that regard between now and second reading, and we'll also take a look at the issues related to tree work and the full panoply of issues between 2 and 4 cycle equipment.
Agreed.
Okay. That's what we have as a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is consider approval of ordinance 2025-17, and this deals with our municipal business license and classification rates. It's an issue, Mr. Chairman, that we addressed in Ways and Means Committee earlier today. The town treasurer can introduce this issue, and/or you can, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. This ordinance, this is the second reading. It was approved through the first reading. However, there is a little change to that, what you've heard last month. There are 2 items to this ordinance. First one is change in the classification of the businesses. So for business licenses, every business falls into the class. And those classes are determined by IRS pretty much. So there's really no room for the council or anyone to change that. And there is about 1,800 businesses that is affected by this change. And its majority of it is short-term rental and management companies. Currently they under class 7, and they're gonna go down to class 6, which means they will pay a little less per our current rate schedule. So with all those changes or updates in the classification, we're projecting a little shortfall in the revenues. Assuming that they will make the same amount of money or report to us the same gross receipts, well, we'll see about $65,000 in less in a business license revenue. So to offset that shortfall, the staff is proposing that we will slightly raise the license fee. It's not the base fee that will change, but so how the license fee structure is for the first 2,000, you're paying the base rate, and everything over that, every 1,000 over that is a percentage of the fraction. So we're proposing to raise that for 10 cents along all the classes, and that way we're projecting that we'll pretty much break even with those changes in the classification. So what I'm asking now is for you to approve the new updated classes and that slight increase in the rate, in the license rate.
And just a couple of other things. If by doing this, it won't affect 2026. So 2026 is already baked in, and we will have a, if everything happens according to what we project, we will have a $65,000 shortfall. This sets us up to correct that in 2027. Number 2, as I mentioned before, this is driven by the state, and we can only change this every 2 years. So we change it now. If we don't change it now, we have to wait till 2027 to change it. That'll set us up for 3 years of potential losses. And then number 3 is we haven't changed it in 4 years.
Correct.
We've gone through a period of pretty high inflation over the last 4 years. So it seems like a reasonable thing to do just to, what's the phrase used, Mr. Mayor? It's
Revenue neutral.
revenue neutral, thank you. So it's revenue neutral to us by raising it 10 cents.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve on second final reading, ordinance 2025-17.
And second?
Further discussion? The only thing I would note and we went over this during Ways and Means, is what we are approving on second and final reading is different than what we had approved on first reading. the staff had initially recommended for
No change.
legitimate reasons, no change in the rate, but we noted at that time that the chair of the Ways and Means Committee was not able to be at that council meeting, that we would intended to take a fresh look at that. He's had further conversations with Dorota subsequent thereto, and based on that, the recommendation now is to approve this revenue neutral approach rather than not make any adjustments and have a potential $65,000 revenue shortfall. So just so everybody understands, what we're proposing here is different than what we did on first reading. Any further discussion? Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
The next agenda item is to consider approval of ordinance 2025-2022, which is to establish the Town of Kiowa Island Design Review Board and process for architectural design review on second and final reading. Can I entertain a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
John, you want to update us to where we are?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is second reading for proposed ordinance 2025-2022. As you have already received a May first reading approval on October 14th, this proposed ordinance establishes a design review board for the town of Kiowa Island, independent of any existing architectural review controls with respect to Kiowa. The Planning Commission was deferred this back at the October 14th meeting, and so at our last meeting in November, recommendation from the Planning Commission was given once more with very minor changes. Those changes are really just to align some consistency between the language and two of the sections, which one being the section 12-130, which are the design standards, and the other section 12-24.2, which establishes the design review board. No other substantive changes have been made. As you recall, at the first reading, the one recommendation that was approved by town council was to incorporate the actual language that we had as a separate document into the actual ordinance. And so under section 12-130, design standards and guidelines, you'll see that the language that we had as a potential separate document guiding architectural design and how the board would be able to review and evaluate projects, those have been incorporated into section 12-130. And those specific elements of site orientation and layout, massing and scale, building structure and heights, fenestration, environmental stewardship, and signs. And so those would be the sort of criteria and metes and bounds of what future members of the board would be using to evaluate design projects. I want to just reiterate two things. One being that the application of this would only be applying to commercial multifamily development. So as currently drafted, this would not incorporate or include single-family residential outside those particular properties which are not governed or administered by an existing architectural review board. So for us, those would be a number of properties on Eugenia Avenue, which would still be subject to this proposed design review board. And then the other thing that I wanted to note is that we did or still continue to at least have some community concern regarding the timing of this effort, and that's with respect to the ongoing discussions and conversations regarding transition of the existing Kiowa Island Architectural Review Board with the Kiowa Island Community Association. And so just for the record, I just wanted to share that staff still supports that this ordinance moving forward. But one thing I wanted to highlight for you guys is that in any transition of the existing Architectural Review Board to the Community Association, that would not incorporate any properties outside the jurisdiction, if you will, of the Community Association. So any future properties that the town, under the town, this ordinance would cover. So this property itself or any future potential annex, Freshfields Village, those properties would be subject to this proposed ordinance.
So John, for clarification, if proposed development of Andel West, for instance, were to take place, this is, they would fall under this
Unless
board.
NWS was annexed into the town, then this would cover them. But if not,
would
then
be
that would,
Charles.
as currently, that would fall under Charleston County, unincorporated
Okay,
Charleston County.
But if annexed, it would come under this purview.
Correct.
Gotcha.
That's all of the highlights there, and I'll turn it.
Just a little bit of, and this is kind of treading over old ground, background and context. Remember, this process started right about 2 years ago as a council members came out of one of our strategic planning sessions. And I had actually proposed that we establish a joint town KICA task force to review issues related to architectural control. Reached out to then KICA board member and later chairman Kevin Donlin to be the counterpart co-chair, and that body took on a life of its own. Extraordinary amount of work was put into it by various participants or members thereof, including current KICA board member who was not then a board member, Beverly Farrow, who spent an extraordinary amount of time and effort. David DiStefano was involved in that. And at least from my perspective, the goal was always to effect transition of architectural control from the developer to the homeowners association, at least with respect to single-family properties. It is my continuing belief that architectural control, the set of considerations, should be primarily reviewed within a HOA by the HOA itself and a subordinate body thereof. As we all may recall, it was a year and a half ago, or maybe more than that, where one of the Kiowa partners came up at that day at that stand and said they were committed to transferring control, architectural control. That hasn't happened. And my understanding is statements have been made that, well, may still consider transferring control of single-family review to the KICA, but not commercial or multifamily. So this was an outgrowth of the lack of kind of any progress, meaningful progress, as well as statements regarding the lack of desire or intent to transition architectural review from on commercial or multifamily properties. Now, that's kind of background and context. As John noted, and more recently, I've gotten some feedback from KICA board members, which I'm certainly appreciative of, and John characterizes as timing, and part of it, I think, I don't want to put words in folks' mouth, but it was a twofold set of two related issues. One is, well, I thought we were going down this path together. KICA and the town were working in cohorts or in collaboration on this effort. On that point, yes, we were, but once the task force recommended that private covenant enforcement and review be transferred to the homeowners association, there really isn't any role any longer for the municipality, because the municipality cannot enforce private covenant restrictions. That's still the hope, that's still the expectation, and that's one of the reasons why this Design Review Board specifically carves out, at least for the time being, single-family residential other than those Eugenia properties that are not subject to the general covenants and the KICA covenants. The other issue is with regard to the timing, because my understanding is there have been maybe renewed conversations or discussions about transition of architectural control tied in, perhaps inextricably intertwined, with gate access related issues. And I'm appreciative of that, but kind of stepping back from this, and this is what I conveyed to at least a couple of KICA board members, is while I am still personally supportive of the transition of architectural review for single-family properties within the province of KICA and the general covenants to the homeowners association, where it resides in most of the country, KICA only has jurisdiction over those properties subject to the KICA covenants and general covenants. It does not have any review authority, architectural review authority whatsoever, and could not with regard to commercial development in Freshfields Village. Undeveloped parcels that are in Freshfields Village or anything that may be added to or annexed subsequent thereto. It doesn't have any review authority. It cannot under the general covenants or KICA covenants with regard to properties that are not covered by those covenants unless those properties voluntarily opt in, and that includes a law of Eugenia. It's also my own personal view, others may disagree, that I'm not sure that the homeowners association is the best place to reside architectural control of commercial projects. And I would probably lump in with that large multifamily projects at all. So that's kind of where we are now, and that's why we are here. And the Planning Commission has started this process. We made substantial changes. It went back to the Planning Commission. They recommended moving forward with this as it presented in front of us with just minor changes. So that's, I'll open up to other kind of questions and comments, but that's a little background and context as to where we are and why we're here.
If I can just add two more points that may be considered in your discussion there. One, this conversation was held at the Planning Commission, the potential combination of our Landscape and Tree Preservation Board with the future Design Review Board. So that hasn't been something the Planning Commission recommended, but that was something that they contemplated debating based on we really haven't had any true activity of the Landscape and Tree Preservation Board, and the roles and functions would be very similar and from an efficiency standpoint of meetings and expertise being recruited for those different boards. And the final thing you note is just under section 12-130, just for one clarification, under the inspections and violations section is fine, just to clarify that for compliance issues, post-occupancy, staff would still have the ability beyond just a one-year period to look at approved plans in concert with an approved as-built survey. So that was just a timing issue, but those are two minor things I would introduce.
Mr. Warren.
Thank you for letting me speak again. It's becoming a regular thing. Obviously, I think that the challenge that I face looking at it is that you might as well just put us in there as the target for what this is. The only commercial property developed on the area that currently the community association oversees is us, for all intent and purposes, anything in the future. But what this forces us to do is go through an ARB process with the community association or whomever is going to have that body for the private, because we're part of we're resident there. We will have to go through two processes. We'll have to go through the ARB because the covenants currently right now tell us we have to. And then we'll also have to go through the ARB for the town because you are the commercial by this ordinance as you pass it. And that is time consuming and more cost to what we're trying to do. So I don't think that's what you're intending to do, but I think that's what's going to happen. And I don't know how to ask you to say, I really don't care who I have to go through for an ARB approval to do a project, but I don't want to have to go through it twice. And if in this process that the ARB is going through right now between the developer and the community association, to do that turnover, I'm not sure I understand right now why this ordinance has to be done today if there can be an effort made if in fact that's going to happen, that the developer is going to pass the ARB for the private homes and so forth that you envision, which I can't argue with the logic of it, it makes sense. Then in that transition, a discussion and a cooperation that would allow then the commercial part of it to be separated from their ARB to this one, to give it one process, rather than forcing us to have to go through two. And so I don't know how you do that legally. I don't know how you do that in timing, but if it would be a perfect opportunity to make a good decision that changes the timing of it so that both can be accomplished. We don't have to go through two ARBs, and they're defined that the ARB that exists today that goes on in the future that will be taking care of the private homes and so forth would have that opportunity to continue to do that. And I don't have to worry about them in terms of what we're going to get approved for the commercial properties we have left to develop behind the gate. And that would be left to the town to do that. So I didn't know that I would make that kind of request, but I think that listening to this, it's the only logical thing that I can see can happen.
Pat, I've had experience in the construction industry, and we've had certain, not situations identical to this, but there are ways to insert into an agreement a trigger that if and or when something occurs, then this agreement becomes effective. Is that something you can do here, a trigger?
Can you give me a little bit more of what you're envisioning?
If and when, or I guess, well, no, if or when KICA no longer, or KICA agrees not to be responsible for providing the ARB for commercial properties, at that point in time, that trigger, then this ordinance would become effective.
You could do something like that in the ordinance, yes.
I'm,
There's a risk.
oh, so my feeble brain here needs to take this to an example. So let's talk about East Beach property, which if the resort develops the tract of land it's got where you used to have the conference center.
Yeah.
And you develop that into multifamily homes and some other commercial enterprise, hotel, shops, whatever. Under the totally confused morass of what's happening between the old ARB and the new ARB, KICA, the whole thing that we were all involved with for 2 years. And then this, where does that fall?
Currently, based on my understanding with my feeble look at it, is that we would have to go to the current ARB, whomever resides in control of that.
Who is it?
Whomever is at the point in time. It sounds like there's a transition that's going to happen between the partners and the community association at some time. But let's just say it's one or the other.
That's been up in the air for a couple of years.
And it still could be up in the air for another 2 years, and so I know the mayor is going to be hesitant to want to try to pull a trigger on it because there's nothing then that gives anybody any initiative or impetus to want to make a decision there. And so I understand being reticent to do that, but I'd also say there's a way to get there, I think. I don't know how fast it can happen, but right now we'd go to both. We would go to whoever is in charge of the ARB that exists, and with this ordinance passed today, we'd also have to come to the town. Is that correct? Is that a fair evaluation of it?
It is, and as always, your thoughtful comments are appreciated and very much welcome and well considered. A couple of things in that regard. You did note some of the timing and pressure related issues. One thing I want to clearly we need to separate out is that regardless of any transition that may or may not occur and has been promised literally for years between the company, the original company under the general covenants, and KICA, would not apply to all properties on Kiowa Island, and it would not apply to properties in Freshfields Village or any other land that is could be ultimately annexed in the town. It could not. So there is no current, KICA could not be part of the process for reviewing commercial, multifamily, or residential properties in Freshfields Village.
Yeah,
but KICA could be responsible for the East Beach property development.
I'm getting to that. Yeah. So the way I'm looking at this, Roger, is we can only know what we know right now. And what we also know right now is promises have been made for literally years and nothing's happened with regard to this. Hope springs eternal that will change. There is certainly the potential for commercial and multifamily properties, if we approve this ordinance, for there to be a dual review process, as there is right now with regard to tree and landscape and some other things. Two things in that regard. One, it's still not clear to me that what would be transitioned to KICA would include commercial or and multifamily, or at least commercial. I haven't seen anything till I see something in a piece of paper, which may or may not ever happen. It's difficult to make a good policy decision around that. Second, it is completely within, if that transition, if all the authority were transferred to KICA that exists under the general covenants, it's completely within KICA's then authority to choose not to exercise that authority with regard to commercial and or multifamily, and so as to only have one review process. Completely within KICA's decision-making prerogative at that point in time. So I would say that's where the attention should probably be focused, if and when that may become a reality. Who knows when it is? And at the end of the day, we can always come back and adjust and readjust this ordinance. And in fact, if it's clear that there's not going to be any transition of architectural review authority to KICA for anything, that doesn't happen, then we may want to add in single family. I might come back and propose, I'm not sure if fellow council members would agree, to add single family into this. And it can also, just is all I can say from an administration standpoint, at least while I'm a mayor, and I trust that would be true going forward, and like it is with everything else right now, where it's a little complicated, that if there is a dual review process for some period of time and for whatever reason, then we'll do our level best on the town administration side to make that as unburdensome as humanly possible, and not try to simply recreate the wheel or duplicate work.
So it's your
Okay, let me
intention.
ask the question first. If you were me,
Yeah.
doing my job, would that have been a good answer for you?
I don't know if it's a good answer. It probably would not have been.
I just want to, it was really well stated, but in the end, it didn't help me at all.
So Brad, it's your intent to have him go through 2 reviews by an ARB. That's your intent.
It would be my hope that that would not be the case.
But right now, that is your intent, is what I heard.
It's not, it would be this entity, because part of the issue is there are other, and we're not talking about just new development, it's potential redevelopment as well of various properties around the island. Who knows?
All right, is it okay if one entity goes through the ARB? He goes through one ARB process.
So the challenges, are you talking about one entity generally?
No,
or
let
are you
me
talking about
rephrase it.
the resort?
Is it acceptable to you for a commercial developer to go through an ARB process, just one? Would it be acceptable to you?
It would be ideal, not just acceptable, ideal that they only have to go through one.
Okay, so why don't we go back to instituting or initiating a trigger, like I said, in the very beginning at the outset, that if KICA is not going to provide that process, then we will.
So let me interject here. Before you answer that question, I'll give you some time to think. My concern is if the developer has to go through an ARB that they own, there's an inherent conflict there where you might not get the same protection and designs. The community might not get the same protection and design standards that they got on single family or that we would get as a town entity. That ownership of the ARB by the partners is what gives me consternation. And what gives me comfort in saying we're going to have to do the dual thing, so we get a look at this
And
too.
I would argue it's not just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What gives me consternation is that we could demand that a developer go through 2 ARB processes with neither one of them being the ultimate decision maker, And what do you, then what does the developer do when he's got two sets of rules that he's supposed to comply with? Who decides which one of those stand?
Well, that one is pretty easy, but counsel, correct me if I'm wrong. The town standards would be, the process would be kind of the minimum standards. Private parties can always subject themselves to more rigorous standards, but at the end of the day, you would have to comply with any town standards.
And that nullifies to the developer any reason to go to the other ARB.
Right.
Because all you can do is you can present to that ARB, they approve, and you don't like it, you come here and you get a different, it doesn't give any certainty that this is the process I can go through and I can know what's going to be approved, and it isn't right. It may be convenient right now. It may be the thing that you feel like you need to do to protect a particular situation from happening again. I understand that. But if you look at it from the perspective of the person coming to you, if you can find a solution to not make us go through two ARBs, that's first priority.
So again, it's not the town, I want to be very clear on this, it's not the town that is making you go through that process.
I disagree with you, Brad. I know what you're saying. I know that the context you're saying it in, but it exists today as what it is.
Yeah.
And you're proposing to make a change and impose the authority of the town in the middle of this situation and say, we are now stating that we are the ultimate authority. It's because if I go to them and I come to you and you don't agree, your ruling stands. You've created yourself as the ultimate authority. And I'm saying to you, that is a burden that as someone wanting to develop, I shouldn't be exposed to or have to be exposed to. You should solve those problems before I have to go through two ARBs.
Unfortunately, Roger, what the town or municipality can't solve for is the existence of a current architectural review regime, which is anomalous in this country. At least almost all the examples that the ARB task force looked at and compiled. That is non-transparent, for which there is no accountability and is rife with conflicts of interest. That's the problem with the status quo. That's partly what we're trying to address. So the review process in the municipality would be inherently subject to open meeting requirements, review processes, appeals, etc. All of those things that don't reside in the current architectural control review process. There is nothing that precludes the current architectural review, and I got a call from an architect this week who's building multiple homes to say it's been weeks before we get any kind of response to anything. There is no obligation, none whatsoever, unless you want to rely on Article 2 of the General Covenants that says if you don't approve within 30 days, it's deemed approval. People might want to take a look at that provision, but other than that, they're sitting on for weeks on end and not getting any action. That's the status quo. Yes, I to my core, my very core of my being, believe that that is not an acceptable place for this community to be at this point in time of our evolution. And is there potentially transition? But I hope the focus, I'm happy to sit down. Kika wants to collaborate. Let's figure out who best should review commercial and multifamily. I truly believe that it should reside with Kika for single family. I'm not persuaded personally that that should be true for commercial, but I agree that we should figure out a way to decide one way or the other. So if the opportunity presents itself to transition to Kika, I would say let's sit down and figure out if you guys think you're well constituted to handle commercial and multifamily, then we could pull back from, just like we're carving out anything subject to, that's not subject to review right now, like Ingenia properties with ARB review, we could carve out Kika's review, and the towns would be with regard to only those properties, commercial or residential, are not subject to general covenants or anything in Freshfields Village. I'd be delighted to be in a position to have that kind of discussion.
As the primary commercial developer on Kiowa, and having been here 23 years, and built multiple projects, commercial projects, renovated multiple commercial projects. They're well constituted to handle that process. The ARB is well constituted. They've done a great job. The examples are out there. They've done a great job doing it. And so I think that it's just a little bit, I don't want to say disingenuous, but I think that it's not fair to say to me, someone who's dealt with that ARB, and did I always agree with them? No. But we've always taken the perspective that if you look around at a place that's established wonderful standards, you look at who we are, where we are, and the standards by which things have been done, it's hard to argue with the quality of what's happened. And so I would say that as a commercial developer here, I don't have any issue with staying with the current ARB. I don't have any issue coming to the town as the ARB. But to go through two is ridiculous, and it's got to be resolved. And if you go ahead and vote this in today, which I know is your intent to do, that you put us into a situation then of where do we go? And why do I waste my time with the current ARB? Why don't I just come here? But they can, and I don't know that they would do this, but they could very well just say, no, you can't go forward, because they have the right to say that to me the way it's currently set up. And so this move to put your own ARB here for commercial and multifamily just makes it harder. And I would ask you, as the people responsible for setting the standards for governance, that you look at it from that perspective: is this the right thing to do right now? I don't think it's the wrong thing to do. I just don't know it's the right thing to do right now. And I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And so I have a question. The draft that we're looking at, section 1224.2, that outlines the design review board and also sets out very clear design standards, frankly, could solve as a model for a really good charter for any review board, architectural review board and process. That said, the reality of what we're dealing with is an ARB that exists and that isn't cooperating and moving the process forward. And I am wondering if that as a compromise, we couldn't allow the existing ARB, the partners ARB, to go ahead and have authority for projects that happen behind the gate, and then the board that is being proposed by the town would have responsibility for anything that's happening outside the gate.
Two things. I think that's an entirely reasonable approach to consider. One is KICA cannot have any authority over properties that are not subject to.
And yes, we know that, but they have taken it anyway.
No, they haven't. There's a reason. A bunch of the Eugenia properties are not subject to any architectural review at all.
Okay, so carve out just those.
Yeah. And which we had. The other thing is, for example, if the partners come back, they're still developing. If they want to come up and develop Upper Beach Walker and they want a PDD, are you comfortable? Maybe you would be with them architecturally approving their own project.
No.
Okay.
They have, obviously, for historically, and if there's a way that we can stop that from happening, yes. But
so that's the challenge. Yeah.
I mean, there is no perfect solution here. We're going to have to come up with a Solomon's.
Can we talk with KICA or the ARB and just table this for a month? I know I have not been involved in any communications about trying to separate out residential from commercial. Isn't that the solution, to make this a separate commercial and residential? So why don't we, instead of debating it?
If you Because if you look at the the proposed East Beach development project combines both.
All right,
What-
but
No,
let's
it's no,
still
that's
try
not
to
single family.
talk.
Multifamily.
Yeah, it separates
But
single family.
residential
Yeah.
is what he
Well,
No,
no,
what
I
he
did say
said.
resident, I was thinking single family.
Okay,
I was
that's-
thinking, I did say
that's-
resident, I was thinking single family. So wouldn't that be the wiser first step instead of trying to go through all this angst? Let's talk with Kika and/or the ARB and see if we can separate it out.
Would anybody from Kika like to respond?
I just want to give you guys one more, what I would say, not necessarily a solution, but an option for, I guess, based on the concerns heard. One would be, it's kind of to what Councilmember Berner referenced earlier, trigger point, but what's not incorporated in the language today is the ability for the town still to have control outside of the existing architectural review board to continue. So maybe there's a waiver that a property owner who is proposing a development can come and request that they be exempt from the DRB process. That still gives the town the ability to control. They can say yes or no. You have to go through the DRB's process. So it still gives the town and can have its own ability to control architectural review boards, but in an instance where there is a conflict where there needs not to be two processes, the town can essentially kind of defer to the existing architectural review board. So just another thought that could be considered.
For awareness, and John, maybe you can elaborate on this, we already have a landscape and tree preservation board that does very similar to this. The framework of the LTP board is pretty much identical, including the ordinance that established it. So this is not our first foray into doing something like this.
And in answer to the mayor's question about the Upper Beach Walker tracks, the town does exert a lot of control over what happens there by virtue of zoning. Doesn't necessarily have to have the architectural review process in order to ensure that that tract is developed appropriately.
Well, I mean, you could argue that with regard to Freshfields Village or anything else, it's all subject to town zoning. The question is there a public interest in all of the issues identified here, in the site orientation, layout, massing and scale, building and structure heights, fenestration, environmental stewardship and process? Is there a public interest in those that don't lend themselves to being addressed solely by a set of private sector interest? And my view is the answer is yes. Would there be a public interest in things like where the community took a big position when we were negotiating with Riverstone regarding Ando West, even though it wasn't in the town's jurisdiction, about architectural consistency and harmony with Freshfields Village, rather than something completely separate. That building heights were similar. And a variety of other things. There was a strong community interest in all of those things, many of which are kind of labeled generally in aesthetic considerations. Might there have been a community interest in, it is what it is now, but in, some of these issues related to what became the Seafields building? My guess is probably yes.
I'd like to go back. Let's table this, my suggestion, and then we can have a group of us, not just one person, sit down and talk with Kika and discuss what we're trying to accomplish. I understand Mr. Farrell's, actually, I agree with Mr. Farrell's point about, they self-regulating themselves, and I agree with that. So let's see if we can get some sort of common ground and agreement that we can separate out single-family residences from commercial or multifamily. And instead of going through all, let's talk first.
And to be clear, I had some of those bilateral conversations, but if it's kind of multilateral conversations, I'm certainly comfortable with that. This is kind of, it's triggered the pending ordinance doctrine, which is because, to the one point Roger made, There is actually development that is already occurring where there is no design review now. There's development and redevelopment occurring. That's certainly true on Eugenia right now. There's no architectural review at all. Do we care about that? Again, I suspect we do. We've cared about having architectural review for each single-family properties and others on Kiowa Island generally. So there are reasons not to inordinately delay this, but I don't have a particular problem, if that's the sense of other council members, to defer this for a month and sit down with KICA board members and try to figure out where they are exactly in the process and what their desire is with regard to this, and whether they think they'll have the capability to handle, and whether that's actually going to in fact going to happen.
So I don't mind the delay. I thought Luke's comments were appropriate as well, and I appreciate that. Where I stand, I was a supporter of the Landscape Tree Preservation Board was set up. There was a needed gap that the municipal function needed to fill. I think that there's a municipal function here as well, that it's our duty to do this. I realize the muddiness of private party stuff going on. I think part of the message when we do that is private parties go figure your stuff out, because we're going to exercise our municipal function to get this straightened out if you can't.
Yes, I have a couple of comments too, and thank you for those. I agree with you. You suggested that we waive our rights if, give it to the other architectural review board. The same could be said about those guys. They could say, we'll waive our rights, now that the town has this in place, we'll waive our rights over commercial and multifamily. So it can go both ways. I'm not sure I want to have the town be waiving rights. I'd rather somebody else waive their rights. With regard to KICA, we could have conversations with KICA, but they still don't own the ARB, right? So they could agree with us, and we could have a common goal, but until it gets transitioned to them, it doesn't really matter that we're in agreement, or am I missing something?
But that would be the agreement to waive their rights, though, for multifamily and commercial. I mean, that's where we would be trying to get to common ground.
But the current ARB, in its current management structure, they still have that purview.
I understand, but that's why I was just suggesting, let's talk, and I agree, I would prefer we have our rights, and I have my druthers if KICA would agree to waive their rights for multifamily and commercial.
Rights that they may or may not end up with, but yeah.
Fine, but that's another point, but let's see if we can get to that common ground, and I think that's the easier resolution, and then we'll take the less easy solution.
So I totally agree. I'm missing something, because let's say that we and KICA have a meeting of the minds and we agree on everything. And we enact this, but then tomorrow there's still a dual path. Roger would have to go through us and through the current ARB.
The South Street ARB.
Yeah. So I think we should do that, and I think we could, but it doesn't change Roger's argument about the dual purpose or the.
So I know Roger's left, and I'll say it to him when I see him next time, but go stand on their desk and have them fix the private problem.
Yeah.
And he's a big kahuna on the island. Go throw that around with them.
And we can still have that conversation, Luke,
I think we
with
should have a
South Street. With South Street,
Part of the frustration, I don't want to put my fellow, KICA board members on the spot here, is we kind of get the back channel concerns. There's not been anything expressed directly by the KICA board institutionally or by any KICA board member to this body with regard to the status of current discussions or their views with regard to the desire or ability to take on commercial or multifamily regulation. Again, I don't know, Sherry, I'm sorry, in just a second, I'll turn over to you.
Carol.
And again, I would note that there are, Stephanie is the member of one of the Charleston Design Review Boards. It's a kind of a standard municipal, there's a public interest. Yeah. It's just not unusual. It does create additional burdens. You try to streamline the process as much as possible, but it's not incumbent on the public interest to step back. It's more incumbent on the private interest.
We're abnormal right now, not normal.
So Carol Medendorf, just speaking for the regimes, you keep adding multifamily in your discussions. And currently, we always go through two, because we have our own HOA that we have to go through for our regime, and then through the Architectural Review Board. So you're adding a third layer in your discussion. So I just want you to think about that when you're thinking about, do you really mean all the regimes that are currently established too? And would we have to go through 3 approvals before we could do anything?
I appreciate that, Carol, but again, it's a choice of that regime and those regime members to subject themselves to their own, which makes perfect sense. Ultimately, zoning is local, and you want to make sure that you're putting in place the most restrictive to benefit your constituents. I get that. Yes, Beverly.
Hi, Beverly Firo, 10 Turtle Beach Lane. So first I want to speak as an individual homeowner, a homeowner who was on the ARB panel with Mayor Belt the first year and with Councilwoman Kay the second year, and who's also here, Dave DiStefano. And help me guys, I'm trying to remember, in all our discussions over 2 years, did we ever talk about separating multifamily home, patio home, single-family home, commercial? It was one ARB. We never spoke about separating it out. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. And if you look at the general covenants, sorry, talking with my hands and pen doesn't work. If you look at the general covenants, all owners, property owners, are subject to the ARB. So I'm a little confused how you can have this carve out of.
Only, Beverly, only property owners, only property that is covered by the general covenants and KICA covenants, which is not all property.
But the property beyond the gate, let's talk about the property beyond the gate, excluding some homes on Eugenia Avenue that were not part of KICA, not part of the general covenants, and occurred in 1977, 76. So at least my remembrance is the understanding the transition was for all properties. The transition plan, which I think you were privy to, and some of the others, it was also included all properties. And I pulled up the presentation that was given to the community and was approved by the KICA board, which was in January of 2025. And it talks about all properties. So I think that has been the intent of all along. Now, over the last year, there's been discussion between KICA and the partners regarding this transition plan, but I don't think it's been tabled or it's been ignored. It's always been on the front burner. So,
since you're up here, let me ask you a question. What's the holdup with the transition? Why hasn't it happened? Who's the entity that's not making it happen?
I think there's been some further discussions that are moving along. They're just not there today to make that type of announcement, but they are moving along.
So bear with me, because I'm ignorant of this totally.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought there was a specific date, like a year or 2 or 3 years ago, where in the KICA covenants or in the partnership agreement or someplace it said, on this date or when this trigger happens, we will transfer it.
No, there was no trigger date. You have to go back to the general covenants, and it says when the partners decide. And you had the comment that was made, I think it was December, at this venue in December of 2023, when they said they would consider the transition. And there was a transition plan, and some of the things we were working out, they had a certain term. We thought it could be sooner. And there were items like that that we were trying to work out, but.
We don't have a date, and we don't know why they won't transition it. Are those two things correct?
A specific date, it was always they have not given, it's correct. There is not a specific date at this time.
And they said 2 years ago that they would do it, but they haven't.
And Beverly, one other question in that regard. So have they, in these new discussions, because they'd previously stated that they weren't willing to transition commercial, has that changed? Have they committed to I understand the task force anticipated all that. Have the Kiowa partners committed to transferring all architectural control to KICA?
I would have to look at the review, not as of this date. And I'd have to really, I have not read the transition plan in almost a year. So I'd have to go back and look. I believe at one proposal that was on the table, they were considering that at one point, but there were some trigger events that had to happen before that would occur.
And what were those triggering events?
I believe it had to do with activities that were going to occur. Okay. Developmental activities.
Yeah.
Okay.
David Stefano, 31 Burris Hall. One of the things that they made it very clear, they said it a couple of times, we're not transitioning until we want to transition, okay? We had negotiations. Even if they said today, we're going to transition, KICA's plan for the transition, at a minimum, was going to take 2 to 3 years to complete the transition. It was going to start with some exterior remodeling, and they wanted to keep control over it, make sure we were doing it well, and it was going to be 3 years before we had total control, and the last thing coming in was commercial residential, okay? That was our timeline, was 2 to 3 years. Their timeline was 5 years to do that. And what made it difficult for KICA is we would have to start hiring staff with nothing to do, because we'd have to hire a director. We went through budgets, what it was going to cost. It was going to cost KICA close to $500,000 to $750,000 to get to the end without the revenue coming in to offset that. So that transition sounded like, I've even had people think that we were just going to take over the ARB. No, all new people. None of me, they could apply for a job if they wanted to, but we couldn't recruit from them. So it was going to be 100% new staff unless somebody wanted to leave their ARB, because they still have ARB functions. They got Orange Hill, they've still got Cacique and all of that stuff. So it was very clear to me that they're going to transition when they want to transition. And it's not going to be tomorrow you've got it. That process was going to be somewhere between, if we negotiated a timeline out, I would have guessed 4 years. That's kind of like the guess we were talking about. And that was 2 years ago. So if they did it today, it's still 4 years out. So that's the time frame that we got to be concerned about. What's going to happen in the next 5 years? Who's going to have what? We don't know. Because if the ARB stays where they are, they're going to be there, period, end of story. Commercial, everything. So there's no way around that unless they want to give it up. If they give it up, obviously, it looks like they're going to give it up to KICA. Okay? We never had any discussions, as Beverly said. There was no differentiation between multifamily, commercial, anything. It was never discussed.
And I agree with that, but where that arose is the statement apparently made by one of the partners that will consider single family over some transition plan, but not commercial.
Right. But looking at it from KICA's standpoint at the time, if we're going to have to hire staff to run an ARB, and it turns out that they're only going to get single family residents, we'll probably have to get rid of half the staff. Because there's not going to be that many new houses, there's going to be a lot of rehabs, okay? So the big kahuna is the resort. They have approvals. And that would be the bulk of the income to keep it to run the ARB with that continuous resort development. If we had no control over that, what's our ARB gonna do? 20 or 30 houses a year? I mean, already the number of building permits is going down. I don't think there's any more than 300 lots on the island that haven't been developed yet. So that was one of the things we were trying to project out in our meetings, particularly near the end. Let's do a timeline that if we're gonna get transition over this 3-year period, what's the average number of new permits getting out? That's going down. At the end of that 3-year period, how many empty lots are there gonna be? And is there gonna be any more commercial development? Because in that time frame, for all we know, the resort could put a bunch of stuff on the existing ARB, and that would be approved and done. So it's, if you could pick a date and say, today, this argument or this discussion would make more sense. But when you're talking about a very, very long 2, 3, 4, 5-year period of transition, trying to put schedules on it, it's very, very difficult. And that was one of the big problems we had with them.
Thank you, David. That was helpful. If I can kind of summarize, though, where I think I'm hearing and where I think I'm at is we're hearing all these protracted timelines, 2 years, 4 years, 3 years, when that happened, when that happened, and it's not getting done. In the meantime, the town has a duty to do something in the absence of something getting done. And while everybody else is trying to figure out what they're going to get together and talk through next, we're on second reading. We could approve this today and then let that be the forcing function, and private parties go figure it out. And people who have a problem with private parties, go stand on their desk. Go lock yourselves in a room and go fix this if you don't like our solution. Because that's not happening.
Mr. Pramar, do you want to offer some perspectives? You've been at this for a long time.
At the risk of being a witness before a court, Mark Pramar, 81 Dungannon Hall. What I can share with you relative to some of the topics that you've discussed is there's been no discussion about separation of land use type. It's always been considered a whole. And the reason for that has been a unified approach. That's not to disagree with the comments that you made about separation. I'm just saying there's been no discussion about that. There's been no even nuance of, well, maybe this could be done at a certain phase and another phase. The phasing has been about complexity of application. The sequence, by way of example, instead of all new construction in a first phase, the idea of a new staff yet to be organized by the community association would start to learn as they would go through a sequence of phasing. The first phase being maintenance, modifications to existing buildings, then substantial improvements, and then new construction. It's usually been that, and as best I can observe through the discussions, there's been comfort isn't the right word, but agreement that a sequenced or a phased process made sense on behalf of the community association accepting something as opposed to all one, just turn it over. There's never been any, I know there's...
Has there been any phasing at all that has happened along
I'm sorry?
those? Has any phasing along those lines happened yet?
No, I'm not representing it has happened. What I'm sharing...
And I'm not challenging, I'm just asking the
Yeah,
question.
what I'm sharing is clarification of one of the points that was discussed about the possibility of separation. Now, maybe there might be some consideration of that. I'm just sharing up to date. It has focused on compression, as was mentioned by you. One party wanted to take this amount of time for transition, another party wanted to do this. A lot of the discussion has been compression, you know, a reasonable sequence of phase over a certain time period.
So, Mark, I'm trying to understand. So what's precluded? I mean, if there's baby steps, it's just kind of review maintenance, which I'm not think, I would argue is not covered by the general covenants at all, but minor property improvements. What's stopped the Kiowa Partners from just transferring that to Kika? Just saying, starting 1 month from now, you have.
I'm saying that's what the discussions have been about.
Those
Is
discussions.
For
to-
years.
Those discussions have been ongoing. The task force have been involved with a conversation with ARB around that for a couple of years now.
I can't explain or defend how long it's taken. What I'm sharing with you today is where it is right now. These are active conversations. The holidays aside, they're active conversations. This coming calendar year is a big component of the potential for activating that transition. It's not timeless or endless.
Kind of cut through it a little bit simply. I appreciate that, but you represent Kiowa Partners. Is Kiowa Partners willing to commit to a date certain, June 1 of 2026, that all architectural control that it currently exercises under the general covenants will be transferred to Kika?
What they're discussing, I can't say yes or no. I can't say that. What they're discussing is the sequence and exact calendar date of where it would start to activate for each phase. That's the discussion.
And in the interim, however long that process takes, the ARB would be reviewing its own development projects, like Frontline Lake.
Like it has since 1978.
Well, but the original, the Beach family was not doing development like the Kiowa Partners have been. They're not building, they weren't building for spec like Kiowa Partners did.
I have witnessed each of the principal eras of the major developer, the 1.0, the 2.0, the 3.0. In each one of those, the ARB, controlled by the major developer, has, in theory, conflict of interest, right? All I can say is testimony to the integrity of that process, recognizing that they're appointed by, because I've been on the side of the panel, I have not seen one time with the Kuwaitis, the Charleston families, or the partners where they pressured any member of the ARB. And I will point to what's been built since that time period. Now, I'm raising my hand saying, all the mistakes I see I made and contributed to, I drive by since the 70s. But it's never been a result of a conflict of interest where there's been pressure by any partner. And I would have seen that.
I would agree with everything you're saying except one. You know, when we all were running 2 or 3 years ago, the Cape was the big albatross. The Cape was a mess up. And, you know, I have to say that if we were involved, I don't think that would have happened.
Well, we could debate the
Yes, we
outcome
can.
of
Yes, we
each,
can.
you know, but that's aesthetic judgment.
Yes.
That's what I'll say.
Agreed.
That's aesthetic judgment, and we can have hopefully a friendly conversation about choices made. And I'll start in the 70s, if you'd like.
You're not that old.
So another question I guess I'll pose, since it's totally within the control of the ARB, is the ARB willing to have public meetings and to have a transparent review process and appeal process and allow all interested stakeholders to be involved in the decision making, all impacted stakeholders be involved in the decision making?
You mean while it's controlled by the partners?
Yes.
I see no reason to change the pattern that has been existing since inception.
Is that a no?
I'm going to use the technique that others have used.
Well, I'm actually, I mean,
So I would propose perhaps that we go ahead with the ordinance as it stands, with some kind of an addendum that says, I'm going to use your month, by June 30th of 2026, that total architectural control be turned over from the partners to Kika, at which point we'll revisit this particular ordinance. But if us putting our shovel in the sand to make something happen, if that's what it takes, I'm willing to vote for this today.
If we can write language like that, I would think that'd be fine too, because I'm of the mind that we need to take action and approve it today, and if a caveat like that is appropriate.
I've always been of the mindset that because of the lack of inaction, this is the path we're going down. We signaled this for a long time.
And as I said earlier, the particular document is a very sound document.
But I've always been willing to come back and put on the agenda revisions to this depending on what transpires. Either direction. Actually onboarding single family if nothing is going to happen, or going the other direction. If commercial on the island, subject to at least multifamily, maybe or maybe not commercial, but if I'm persuaded that Kika has the infrastructure and the capability, the desire to, and has the authority at that point in time to exercise architectural control on Kika-covered properties, general covenant properties for the commercial or residential, that we can amend this and carve that out.
If there is a deadline, if there's a time set down within this ordinance, then all of the factors that have postponed action by Kika, for instance, the cost of taking on staff, all of the stuff that goes on surrounding addition of staff with no money coming in to offset that, then they can start thinking about actually taking some action. Without a deadline, if I was a Kika board member, I wouldn't do anything either.
So I was going to suggest, trying to get to the same place I think you're trying to get to, the minutes of this meeting are going to hopefully capture what our intent was if we approve this today, and our expectation that as results are gained in the private conversations, we're willing to revisit this. In my mind, that's ample record that when you produce results, demonstrate it, and we'll take this back up again and review what that does to this ordinance. I don't know if that works for you or not, but.
Are you suggesting sort of the inverse of what Madeline suggested, is implement it today, saying we'll maybe pull back in 6 months, where you're saying implement it today but not have it effective for 6 months?
No, I think we've said the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm in
slightly different ways.
I'm sort of in the same camp. Implement this today, and we will review this if something happens.
That's where I'm at.
If nothing happens, this is in place.
It's just how do we capture our
And
intent to review?
If nothing happens, then perhaps this becomes the organization of record, the ultimate decision maker.
So do we need some revised wording in here now?
Well, we can either simply say it's the sense of the council to come back at a date certain and consider whether any revisions are appropriate given, or we can embed some clause or sentence to that effect in the ordinance.
I am just going to excuse myself
Okay.
for a minute.
Okay. Would you like?
Mac, do you have a preference?
I'd say just adopt it as is, and if y'all want to revisit it, you can revisit it.
I want a date in there, Mac.
Well, I mean, it just get reflected that in the minutes that it's the sense of the council to the extent that transfer of architectural control is affected from Kiowa Partners to the Community Association by June 30, 2026, that the council will revisit this ordinance and consider carving out or a waiver from the application of these provisions to properties subject to Kika, those Kika covenants.
Is it good enough to have that language reflected in the minutes, or do we need to attach it to the ordinance?
No, I mean, we can put exactly what he just said in the ordinance. What he said is
I'm good.
I would put it in the ordinance.
Okay.
So it'd be a motion to amend.
Yeah.
I
So
will
if
make
I
a motion
understand-
to amend.
So this ordinance, essentially what we're saying is that the effective date would be June 30th.
No. The
Okay.
effective date is today, that there is a provision in this ordinance that upon the if there is a transition of architectural authority from the the company to the Kiawah Island Community Association on or before June 30, 2026, that the council will revisit and consider an appropriate carve-out from the application of these provisions to properties subject to those KICA covenants.
And so I guess then the question I have is, because it would become effective today, say we get an application in January or February, is council not going to constitute a body to be able to review this, or essentially have an ordinance that will not be enforced?
No, this would be applicable and
Okay, that's what I
enforced
just
until
wanted to
then.
say then, yeah.
If we make the decision later on whether, if certain things happen, then I would be fine, potentially fine, of carving out from the application of the town's jurisdiction property subject to the KICA's architectural board review.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that
we
if
need
we
to
have
solicit
application
members
before
now.
June, that if we have an application before June, that we're reviewing it.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
that's all.
Stephanie,
That's right.
That's all.
what I wanted to what I thought you were sharing is to make sure that in the effect of this ordinance being today, then the implementation of the ordinance is not necessarily today without the appointments of those members of the DRB. So
Yeah,
that's what I
that's
just wanted to make
correct.
sure.
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Right, yeah, so, but they can be appointed in January, and if we have applications, then we just.
That's all I wanted to
proceed.
say.
And at the end of the day, the only issue come January, let's assume all the stars align and that all comes together and we decide we'll carve out KICA. This design review board would still exist with regard to all properties that would not otherwise be within the jurisdiction of KICA. So this would still have the design review board.
Correct.
We have applicants now?
No, we haven't. Yeah, because we haven't approved.
We haven't approved it yet, but I just wanted.
So if we approve this now, we can put out requests for applicants like we do in the ordinary
Right,
course for
right.
boards and commissions,
Which
which
will
we
be-
start doing here the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it would just be commercial and multifamily applicants.
Pardon?
Just commercial and multifamily applicants.
Yes. Well,
Should be.
no, it's not applicants, it's for the board, and the board's jurisdiction is only with regard to.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Better way to say it.
yeah. Commercial, multifamily, and a limited number of single-family residential.
Well, let's vote, and then I'm with Madeline, take 5.
Okay. Do we need to actually vote on that amendment? Okay. There's been a.
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor of that amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion on the underlying ordinance as amended? No further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right. 5-minute recess?
5-minute recess?
Oh, you're killing me.
Time to stand, it's time to stand.
My poor dog, she's going to be missing her dinner, and
So where's Laura?
she's still in DC.
Oh. When does she come home?
She'll probably get back, I think she's flying back on, I think I have that Thursday. Yeah.
You know, I was out in Montana. This was, I think, the first time I ever really flew. County, boy, it's crowded. It was interesting going to Charleston Airport. Never seen it that crowded. It was busy.
Well, the airport continues to grow. The overall flight slots is building a new terminal.
Right.
I mean, it's the days where, I've always liked Charleston Airport
Well,
less
parking
so.
to that point, so I assume you know where the overflow parking is? All right. So, when we arrived yesterday, we parked in an overflow. The cars were overflowing the overflow lot.
Yeah, wow.
They were parked on the sides and the shoulders, and on top of all that, they had what they called a holiday.
First, approval of the town meeting schedule for 2026. A lot of questions, comments, discussion?
I would like to delete 2 meetings from the schedule. Can I do that? For Environmental Committee, delete July 15th. For Resiliency, delete July 22nd. That's all I've got.
Any other changes? With those changes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Not sure we actually had a motion, but.
It's official.
Okay. Just now, they're not action items. The next 2 are not action items, they're discussion items only. Next is the charitable grants, guidelines and applications. Stephanie, if you kind of remind us on what the process has been heretofore, what the timing is, and what kind of decisions the council may want to consider making.
Okay. Just as a reminder, at the last charitable contribution that we had earlier this year, there was discussion in regards to potentially adding a 4th category. And that category we talked about was education or youth. So staff was tasked, I looked into pulled together the last 3 years. I sent you all just some brief information, but I pulled together the last 3 years just to look at what has been funded. Historically, what has happened is that former council members, when I started with this 10 years ago, there was really no clear guidelines in terms of what would be funded. It was essentially applications was received. The Ways and Means and Town Council went through a laundry list and they decided what would be essentially granted out. Then, probably about 5 years or so ago, they started funding more projects or grantees that was related to hunger, health, and housing. So they essentially memorialized that and said these would be our three primary interests that we would fund as council. So it was memorialized, I believe back 2 years ago, 2023, 2022, for the hunger, health, and housing. And we as staff have been presenting that to Ways and Means for the last 3 years in terms of that category. So in 2023, it went essentially a third, a third, a third in terms of hunger, health, and housing. In 2024, it was more hunger funded at 51%, health at 38%, and housing at 11%. And just this year, 50% of it was hunger, 27% was health, and 20% housing. And then we had other, and that other is going to be staff's recommendation that if this is something that council is interested in doing, we create a fourth category that's called youth enrichment as a fourth category. That category would consist of programs like Camp Hope, Camp High Hope, Charleston Area Therapeutic Writing, First Serve Foundation. Those are categories that really didn't fit the health, hunger, and housing, but they have been funded in the past. And with this new category, we then believe that those things can fit under that fourth category. With that also happened that the conversation that took place as well was brought up by the mayor, which was in regards to the administrative expense guidelines. We really don't have one in terms of looking at, as the applications come in, look at the percentage of funding that goes towards programming versus administrative. I did a little bit of research. I looked at the Charity Navigator. They said 7 out of 10 charities they rate spend at least 70% of expenses directly on programs. So one of my recommendations would be to add that 70% program expense guidance. If you want that percent higher or lower, that is fine. I just Googled it to see what other, essentially the national average is for programs, and they state is at about 70%.
Stephanie, I seem to remember someplace in the back of my cold stuffed brain that there's an organization that does ratings, and like 85% was kind of the truth. There's 85, might be 90 and then 95, but 85 seemed to be like the floor. Do you remember, we talked about this,
I mean, GuideStar is one, and there are a couple of others. I mean, you will see, like, when I was on the board of UNICEF, they would argue that 90%, more than 90% of all contributions went to program, not administration, less than 10% overhead. But I do recall that 70% is kind of a
minimum threshold.
Minimum threshold.
That's minimum, just Charity Navigator had stated that 7 out of 10 charities that they rate spend at least 70% of expenses directly on programs. They said this is a widely recognized industry benchmark through that. And a lot of charity organizations go, essentially report.
I mean, that's a lot of overhead still to, I mean, a lot of contributions to overhead. And I wouldn't have an issue making it a higher number, but I also, I don't want to preclude, our support of organizations which are not quite as professionally organized at this juncture and aren't as kind of lean from an operational standpoint, but.
I know we talked last year about this or state tax, but about the dental organization. And the state required them to have a dentist as part of their administration.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Gave them a pass because it was a state requirement that you have a doctor supervise. Even though the dentist volunteered, you had to have a dentist supervise him.
I guess I forgot about.
And I did put in there that this would be a guidance for evaluation, and essentially stated that organizations with higher admin costs could still be funded if they explain why. Certified instructors, licensed healthcare providers. So that's where these kind of 3 watchdog organizations, you have BBBY's giving states 65%, American Institute of Philanthropic recommends 60 at a minimum, but 75 plus preferred. But then with that caveat that some have to have these specialized, as long as they can explain why their costs are high, then that can be
I don't know where that is in here, but I would love to see it read something like bare minimum 75%, 70%, with an effort to target institutions at 85% non-administrative fees. If we could, if that's reasonable to everybody else.
You were like 70%.
I'm fine with 70%, but with us trying to find organizations that are 85, prioritizing organizations with 85%.
Okay.
Since this applies to the board that's going to review and that, I think that's fine in my mind too. I guess as I was thinking about the conversation you were having, you know, my experience has been combined federal campaign. I don't donate my own money to anything over 90, but these are large charitable organizations. We're talking about oftentimes grassroots organizations here that may not even, part of the reason they exist is because nobody has time to volunteer for it.
I'm surprised there isn't anything educational.
Well, and that was one of the pieces of input that you requested from us, Stephanie, was whether education should be a fourth category. And as I was reading through this document, that was the first thing that was not included that popped to mind. I would like to add it as a
Well,
fourth
one of the
category.
things, youth enrichment, what falls under that would be adding youth enrichment as a fourth category would create a formal home for programs essentially, but then it
So
says,
youth development, my preference was education.
well, youth programs would be educational support, therapeutic recreation, structured summer and after-school activities, or sports-based development. That will all fall under
That
you. So
riding-
education.
Riding academy, for instance.
And so that would fall under that. So the youth, so education support would fall under that.
I would not want to give, I would more want to focus on academics than.
Therapeutic writing, yeah.
Okay, so youth enrichment, then you want to take out therapeutic. So right now I have youth enrichment to include educational support.
Can we just change it to education?
Yeah.
I'd like to do that.
And then I'll create a description, just education.
Yes, Rhoda?
Rhoda?
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, so of course, if we just have, we can have 5 categories, but if we don't have youth enrichment, I try to incorporate all that, but we just switch that to education. If we want to have a category for like therapeutic recreation, we can call that youth enrichment and then have another category that says education. We can have 5 categories.
Well, I think part of the pushback, Stephanie, a little bit is whether all of those, however laudable they otherwise are, whether
Right.
all those youth enrichment ones are the types of organizations or activities that the council is interested in supporting. Now, I think that's the question. I don't have a strong
Right,
view
right.
about it. I mean, we could literally get rid of all the categories and say, apply for anything that's life enriching, and then we can consider each one that's, on its own individual merits.
Merit, yeah.
I think this predates me, but I think the idea of going down the HHH path was to kind of narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and it made sense,
It
but
made
I'd
sense.
like to add educational.
Okay.
Okay, I can add education. I just went to the minutes, and based on a comment that you had made, you had specifically suggested adding education enrichment to the criteria, and Councilmember Farrell acknowledged enrichment. So we can do education.
I would steer clear of the word enrichment,
Enrichment?
just
Okay.
education.
Okay,
For fundamental educational opportunities.
Okay.
And you can have a gray area there too. But,
yeah, okay. So we would still have hunger, health, and housing, and then the 4th category would be education. Okay? And then I added with regards to the administrative expense guidelines, which is a minimum 70%, but we would give preference if you're 85% priority.
I agree.
And then the 3rd would be implementing a mid-year reporting, that all grant recipients would submit a brief progress report 6 months after receiving funding, just documenting how the funds are used, or if they're not used, why, and then we can go from there. And then those were essentially my 3 recommendations. One of the things that I wanted to point out, just in case you all weren't aware or just forgotten, Dorota, please help me with this because it's a little complicated, is that the way that we fund and come up with the $200,000 is essentially based on the general fund. It is 20%? The delta.
Like business work from general fund, or 200,000, whichever is
It's less.
So we've always did 200,000 because our, change is higher. So the mayor suggested we get rid of the verbiage of 20% of the change in the general fund and just leave it at 200,000,
Or whatever,
or you can increase
whatever
it.
amount we kind of want to.
Yes.
So I would suggest getting rid of the language, but also increasing it to 250.
And it hasn't been adjusted in
A number of years,
handful of years.
years.
And I certainly would be supportive of that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
I would like to have a more defined educational. What do you consider educational? Is it going to be the Charleston Symphony that does classes in St. John's High School, which was something that came up before, and that's when they cut us right there off at the knees and said, no more arts, no more education.
I would say
I
academics.
need to have a little bit more
Academics.
because I'm the one that.
Yeah, academic.
So academics as in after-school program
We're tutoring,
or tutoring? How about with the summer camp out
Volunteer
all in that?
literacy, my wife used to volunteer, that volunteer literacy
Would Camp High Hopes fall into that?
camp.
What do they do?
Their summer enrichment program.
probably not.
Fruit, lunches, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. They were listed under Camp High Hope, fell under hunger. They
Oh,
were
yeah,
funded
well,
under
so they're
hunger.
covered under hunger, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I would like to see it be more like true, this is just me, I'm only one vote, but true educational stuff, not writing to learn to better balance and that educating on balance. Just,
yeah, me too.
Math,
Only
reading.
I'm
academics.
just gonna warn y'all, you're gonna get a resident who is going to have a very severe pushback on that.
It's okay.
I'm just warning you.
Well, and
Pushback on-
I don't happen to agree with that. I would have a looser definition of education.
No, I'm just talking about.
I'm just saying, as part of our commentary here,
How
Luke
about this? What I'll do is I hear education, I can work on pulling together a definition, and I can send this across to you all and just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down before we finalize this grant application.
This is an administrative program that council simply authorizes within our budget. And so, kind of administrative details, it doesn't need to be formally approved, but the sense of council in terms of directing the staff and administration is welcome.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm, the means Grinch, right? Okay, so I start with reading, writing, arithmetic. I'm happy to be tempered by Miss Kay and being a little softer, so.
Okay.
Please take her.
I'll look into it, because what I put under you, I know we're not doing youth enrichment, but under that I had for education, I had educational support, tutoring, literacy programs, or STEM education for underserved students.
All of that sounds
great.
My heart is bleeding.
Or even
Okay.
something like, I'm going to say, coaching for job applicants, resume building.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not laudable. I would struggle to fit that under education. That's all.
What is Our Lady of
Yeah.
Mercy,
Yeah.
Our Lady of Mercy Outreach does that.
Okay, well, I mean,
We fund them.
coaching somebody how to present themselves in an interview, I think is very important.
Okay,
Well,
I added,
raised that.
I added
was
workforce,
council.
I added
It has
workforce
to be
readiness on there.
Clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Very clearly and explicitly.
Not that we're voting, but does everyone support increasing this to 250? Okay, so I will make changes, update, and send it out. Okay,
Thank you.
that was it.
Very well done, Stephanie.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. last agenda item of new business is discussion of the Ad hoc Civic and Cultural Center Edition Construction Committee Charter, which is something we had surfaced as a action item at the last council meeting. There's kind of no, we don't need to appoint a committee at this time. We'll need to in the relatively near future. I'm continuing to involve, just in the ordinary course as we kind of have initial conversations, some of the prior committee members, selection committee members. But this is not yet, we're not yet ready to formally constitute a committee and the charter. And we wanted to open up discussion here. If anybody has any changes, probably bring this back in January for final approval.
One of my only comments, not one of my only comment is you have 7 members, no more than 7 members. That's a lot of people to try to herd. It's like herding cats. I would be more happy with only 5.
So my inclination is, yes, to do 5. But also the thought was, if you go through the process to allow for adding somebody that, you know, find has particular, like commercial construction background experience you can't identify at the outset. Because I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be me and another council member. It's going to be David Wall, an architect, and whether it's the town administrator or one other person. And we're kind of already at 5. And so the question then is, yes, I don't want to have a big one, but I'd love to have the latitude to be able to, if we identify somebody with really the right kind of background, learn about that, to add them.
The more chefs.
Noted.
Okay.
Noted. So again, at the outset, my thought is to limit it to 5.
Okay. Yep.
So this is going to sound self-serving, but the additional council member, somebody ought to be on there that looks purely at the financials.
So we can't have 3 council members, and the question of relevant backgrounds. My thought was, if necessary, to establish a separate ad hoc committee to deal with finance issues. In which case you would chair that, or we don't even need to have a committee. I don't think we did the last time to come up with a financing mechanism. I can simply, please task you, request that you take on that as part of this process and make a recommendation back to us, the council. But that is a shorter term, I mean, a more discrete piece of this. You kind of put that in place.
Okay.
The nice thing about having 7 is if you have 1 or 2 who can't attend the meeting, you still have enough of a quorum to have a meaningful decision that's made.
Well, I mean, if you just had 5, 3 would be a quorum.
Quorum, but enough. I'm not on the committee. I don't know how you're dynamic.
Well, I mean, and that's a fair point. My guess is with kind of monthly meetings, once we get going over a period of like 18 months or something, that's a lot of meetings, and people aren't going to be able to make all of those. But we can also do it. They can call in. They can do it virtually. Okay.
My experience is that I always have 2 or 3 people who can't attend.
I think this is a good start, and thanks for pulling this together, especially as quickly as we saw it.
Stephanie took the initial laboring oar and did a great job in that.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. I'm not sure how to inject this just yet, and I need to think about it some more. I'm fine with, I'm trying to figure out what hooks council needs to have. I know you talk about the monthly reports and stuff like that. I think that there are, besides financial things, there are key things that council needs to be aware of and weighing in on before it's a done deal. You know, what's the place look like? Is it going to be Gothic? Is it going to be postmodern? You know, I'm concerned that there's authority to make those kinds of decisions in the charter right now, and I don't want council to show up at the ribbon cutting and go, that's not at all I anticipated.
This is construction, so it's after everything you just said.
No, this is before construction. This is before construction. Yeah.
You go home now.
So this is including design as well? I thought you were talking just construction.
Well, no, it says in discharge duties, the committee shall review and provide recommendations on design phase deliverables. And it's focused on the key design phase, including schematic design documents, design development documents, construction docs, et cetera.
Well, this came up last month, that there were several of us who said we'd really like to be updated very systematically as this project moves forward.
And that is, I mean, the desire is you get, you get formal monthly reports. That doesn't preclude, you know.
Who's doing the formal monthly reports?
The committee. Yes, once constituted, the committee will be doing the reports.
I guess the reports are great, but they're after the fact. I think that there are, and I don't know what they are yet, but there are some points where the council needs to be pulled in before a decision's made, and I'm just not sure what those are yet. And I think we need to capture that somehow.
All right, so that would be at the end of the conceptual phase and the schematic phase where you're approving the Gothic look.
I'm not sure we want it to be at the
Corinthian
end,
look.
though. I think
Yeah.
during the process, not just at the end.
Yeah,
I have the same concern
Yes.
Mr. Spencer does.
Well, so that's why, for discussion, if you guys have discrete thoughts about what are the specific component parts where the council would like to have, you know, review prior to, you know, any final,
Right, so
actions.
customarily, there will be a review at the 50% schematic phase, 50% conceptual phase before you get to the, but, you know, that doesn't mean that you can't be aware of what's happening.
Yeah,
beforehand.
and something along those lines is fine, but whatever, you know, we were struggling a little bit to try to capture exactly what those are. Again, being mindful of the fact that there's going to be regular communication reporting out. The question is, what are the things that are appropriate for a formal council consideration and approval in a public meeting? You know, and just kind of, you know, coming in over the top and where there's been, you know, literally every day kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Is the challenge, the practical challenge. So I usually set up these kinds of committees to be charged with doing that, and the corporate body just relies on those committees.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go.
So
Thank
do
you.
you envision then, at every council meeting, there would be a brief presentation, not presentation, but a brief discussion of what's happening?
Well, I mean, certainly at least reporting out, and if there are questions, that would be a report from the, I'm probably thinking like in the staff report, you know, when you have the updates there, or presentation, there's gonna be one from the building committee. It may be from me, it may be from you, it may be from another committee member, and then there's gonna be questions and comments about
But
it.
to Lance's point, though, there's going to have to be, at inopportune times, a decision made where Co is going to say, I need you guys to give me a yay or nay on this layout, on this widget.
So that's what as a general matter, that's what this committee is constituted
So
to do.
Well, but that goes against what Lance and Luke were just saying. So you're in chartering the committee to make those
Well, that's generally
decisions?
what these committees are chartered to do, but I recognize the interest and desire of the case. So interposing, you know, because these are sometimes daily decisions. I mean, they literally can come up at any point in time, and the committee is the one that's charged for being the administrative branch.
I hear everything you're saying.
And so
I hear everything you're saying, and I agree that there has to be timely decisions. I still think there has to be a vehicle to keep you guys more informed than once a month, at least initially.
And I think that Co knows when those decisions are coming.
Yeah.
And so how do we?
What I can do
yeah.
is I can, I'll reach out to Steve Coe, and maybe I can get a little bit more, so what I'm hearing maybe is from the schematic and design, maybe I can get a little bit more of a breakdown and kind of find out when their milestones are, and I can revise this, maybe incorporate, talk with the mayor, maybe try to incorporate those kind of key dates where I would say, okay, Steve, for your schematic design and your team, what is your kind of milestones? And then we can figure out, and he can let me know, and then I can incorporate those in, and then we can have it so that that information somehow comes to you all. We will set it up where either it's a special call meeting if you want to vote for it, or it's set up at the same timeline of a council meeting.
And he
But-
offered to even update us, remember?
Right, he has, so I can sit down with him and get some, a little bit more specificity to his dates and what he's doing, and then incorporate that in here.
Well, and if you're talking
I
to
can
him.
take a stab at that.
I imagine this isn't the first time somebody's done this in a civic kind of role. So he may have some insights into, here's typically what would get done by a committee and can advise us on that stuff.
Okay.
And I'm very receptive to hearing his experience on it.
All right, so.
I can take a stab at that.
Dollars, though, what I've been in, what my experience has been mostly on public entities is that the public entity would meet once a month, and any changes to design that cost money have to wait for that meeting, unless you're going to provide that authority to the committee.
Some of that is to the, none of that is to the committee. And here, depending on the dollar amount, change orders under 20,000, committee recommendation to the mayor for approval.
Okay,
20 to
because-
100, recommendation to mayor with reporting to Ways and Means prior to approval, and orders 100, 1,000 more, committee recommendation to town council for approval.
And
All right,
that
so-
currently follows our procurement
As
policy.
an example, they're out there, they're digging a foundation, they find a buried oil tank. And they say, oh my God, we have to somehow figure out how to get rid of it. And I need an answer really quick. I can't wait 2 or 3 weeks or the job's gonna be delayed.
Yep. And we have and depending on the cost of that, we again, that is embedded in here.
That's a good example of something that's real time.
Unforeseeable.
Yeah.
And they need an answer because they're digging.
And I think then there's the foreseeable Steve's done this 1,000 times probably. He knows, I'm going to need a decision in 3 weeks from you guys on this major milestone where we're at point of no return. And that could be the tickler of, okay, is this the kind of thing we need to get in front of council and just run it by us, make sure we're on board, and then committee go do your thing some more.
So an example of what something like that might be is a early decision point. We've had a lot of back and forth committees on kind of the theater seating. And all of a sudden, okay, here's what our architects and everybody's recommendation is relative to cost. But by the way, to lock in that cost, we need to place that order imminently. It's a long lead time, costs could change. And that's the type of thing that I would anticipate, even though we probably could, that might be the type of thing that would want to come back for the council to say, yeah, we're fine with the cost and we're kind of fine with what this is and looks like.
And theater seating with 40 surround sounds worth it to us versus, yeah.
Well, but again, I want to be careful there. The council isn't going to be in a position as a body to make all of those every single one of those trade-off calculations.
I don't think that we will, but I think that there are going to be some there that the committee should bring a recommendation to council based off of their trade-offs.
Trying to identify what those are.
Yeah, I know,
and with
that's
help
what I'm struggling with too.
Steve
Yeah.
is a challenge.
So it would be helpful for me to get an update, just an update, at our council meetings over the course of this project. This is a project that's got a lot of community interest. I don't need to make the decisions about theater seating. That's the committee's job, or picking tile. I do need to be able to answer questions that my neighbors and friends and golf buddies say, what about X, Y, or Z? I just want to be updated. I don't need to make the decision. So keep that regular, and when there's some kind of big milestone that COA is going to be aware of, when that requires that we come together and vote and make the appropriate, whatever decision, great. But I don't need a lot more than the regular updates.
And I think the updates looking back and looking ahead, because I think it's in there that there'll be projection of what the next activities are in the updates. that could maybe be a trigger of, hey, that's
time.
something that
Yeah.
we'd like to,
Want to dig into a little bit.
Yeah.
Know a little bit more about that.
yeah, I'm not trying to make it onerous or hard. I just want to make sure that,
No,
like you said,
you're not.
we're
No.
accountable.
Yeah.
Well, and some of that it may just come up in the context of a regular reporting out monthly update, that there's something that comes out of that we may want to have to schedule a special call meeting the following week.
Likely, that will probably happen.
Yeah.
I think it will happen, yes.
So my question is, we picked the architect. They weren't our designs, they were concept designs. But is the one we picked and their design, is that where we're starting?
Yes. Yes.
It'll be revised a little, tweaked a little, but that's a starting.
Probably more than a little, because they've committed to, consistent with that overall design concept, carving out a couple $1 million worth of cost. Yeah.
So that would be probably the first milestone for me is, here's our original pencil. Here's our next pencil with $2 million taken out.
Right. I'd
Well,
like to see that
they
too.
they have already said they believe they can, what's in the contract, the AI contract is $9.5 million for building cost, and then all other soft costs, but and contingencies, but $12 million. And that's what they're going to design to, unless we tell them otherwise. But some things that, for example, out of the design, which I conveyed to them, is, it looked really nice, that really, all the light, the big glass wall on the community center in their design, walking up to, very impressive. Problem is, that faces directly west. And no, you really, just practically speaking.
Sunset.
Yeah, you just can't, in the middle of the afternoon, it's bad enough to put this shade down and the heat and the sun we get in here. You just can't have an entire glass wall. Now, maybe you have the entire glass wall facing that way or something, if you want to.
Trees work though to provide shade.
What's that?
Trees provide shade.
Trees, we
Or
talked
we'll
about
just
that.
put up
That's
cinder block fencing.
Hmm?
It's the end of the day,
But I'm with you,
folks.
Liz, that's a stage that I'd like to see how they reconcile the cost to the
And you should.
conceptual design.
Yeah, and you should see that.
Before they start going hog wild on it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You should see that.
Well, one thing they've already been kind of discussed is like the carport thing, whatever.
Canopy.
The canopy.
Yeah, that's gone.
Well,
That's $1
they
million.
said, can we leave it in as a nice to have if we can keep within budget some element of that? And I said, that's fine, but that's an expensive, and it, it was going all the way around and out and further, and if you need any overhang at all on those outer areas, or people just stay inside if it's raining or inclement weather, those are the kinds of things where there are some areas where it's pretty easy where they could carve out some. The supporting rooms were larger than really necessary. I think they had 2 8-person guest rooms, not guest room, and another 2 or 4-person one, plus a green room, all of about 1,200 square feet or more. And it was more than that. So they don't need to be quite.
Yeah, that's large.
Yeah.
So I've got a totally different question. Are we buying a grand piano?
I think so.
I would expect, if there's not one donated.
Because there's a requirement to be able to store it.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, we're buying a grand piano.
It's clear the expectation that you will have a grand piano.
I think so.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fundraiser item.
It could
A
be.
fundraiser for a grand piano,
Yeah.
a donation.
Anyway, the hour is late. My little girl has passed her dinner time and. Huh?
Oh, you're a single dad?
So if any further, if any further questions, comments, please provide additional thoughts regarding this, and I anticipate we'll probably bring this back next month.
When you can, just let us know what you find out. That'd be great. Don't need to wait for the next council meeting.
So that's how we get the meetings done.
Make his dog hungry and.
That's right. Send Laura out of
Yes.
town.
Make sure Laura's out of town. And I go.
Out of town, that's all we have to do.
Citizen comments. I don't see any citizens to make comments. Any further council member comments?
Sign up to do manufactured wire reefs.
I appreciate you saying that.
Without any further business being before us, the